The first book of Samuel, chapter 1. In Ramah, nestled within the hills of Ephraim, resided a man named Elkanah. His lineage traced back through Jeroham, Elihu, Tohu, and Zuph, all descendants of Ephraim. Elkanah had 2 wives, a common practice in those times, Peninnah and Hannah. Peninnah bore children, a source of pride and societal standing, but Hannah remained barren, a deep sorrow in her heart. Each year, Elkanah and his family journeyed from their village to the sanctuary at Shiloh. There, they would worship the Almighty God and present offerings in his honor, seeking his blessings and favor. The sanctuary was also overseen by the 2 sons of Eli, the priest, Hophni and Phinehas, men whose characters would later prove to be deeply flawed. Whenever Elkanah presented a sacrifice, he would apportion a share of the meat to Peninnah and her children, ensuring they had their fill from the bounty of the offering. But to Hannah, he would give a double portion, a testament to his deep and abiding love for her. Despite his affection, the pain of her barrenness lingered, a constant reminder of what she lacked. God, for reasons unknown to her, had closed her womb. Peninnah, in her pride and perhaps a touch of jealousy, would taunt Hannah relentlessly about her inability to conceive. She would provoke and mock her, turning the knife in Hannah's already wounded heart. This torment was so severe that Hannah would weep bitterly and lose her appetite, the joy of the festival overshadowed by her personal anguish. Year after year, as they made their pilgrimage to the sanctuary, Peninnah's cruel barbs would find their mark. On one such visit, Elkanah, witnessing Hannah's distress, questioned her with concern. "Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you refuse to eat? Why is your heart so heavy? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? Hannah, unable to find solace in his words, ceased eating. She rose and went to the sanctuary to pour out her soul in prayer. Eli, the priest, sat on a chair near the doorpost, observing the worshippers. Overcome with sorrow, Hannah wept uncontrollably as she prayed silently to God, her lips moving but no sound escaping. In her anguish, she made a solemn vow, "O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give your servant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head." Hannah prayed in silence, her lips trembling with fervent supplication. Eli watched her, noticing only the movement of her lips but hearing no words. He assumed she was drunk. "How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself?" he demanded. "Put away your wine." Hannah, startled and deeply offended, replied, "No, my lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation." Eli, realizing his misjudgment and touched by her sincerity, responded, "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him." And Hannah said, "Let your servant find favor in your sight." With a sense of hope renewed, Hannah returned, ate, and her face was no longer downcast. The following morning, Elkanah and his family rose early and worshipped the Lord. Then they returned to their home in Ramah. Elkanah knew Hannah intimately, and the Lord remembered her. In due time Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Samuel, meaning heard by God, because she said, "I have asked for him from the Lord." When the time came for Elkanah and his family to go up to Shiloh to offer the annual sacrifice and his vow, Hannah did not go. She explained to her husband, "As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever." Elkanah, understanding and supportive, replied, "Do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only, may the Lord establish his word." So Hannah remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. When Samuel was weaned, Hannah took him up with her, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and she brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. Though young, Samuel was destined for a life of service. After they had sacrificed the bull, they brought the boy to Eli, presenting their precious gift to the Lord. And Hannah said, "Oh, my Lord, as surely as you live, I am the woman who was standing here in your presence, praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition that I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. And they worshipped the Lord there. Chapter 2. Then Hannah prayed and said, My heart exults in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, but those who stumbled are armed with strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. The barren has borne 7, but she who has many children is forlorn. The Lord kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked shall be cut off in darkness, for not by might shall a man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Against them he will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah. And the boy ministered to the Lord in the presence of Eli the priest. Now the sons of Eli were worthless men. They did not know the Lord. The custom of the priests with the people was that when any man offered sacrifice, the priest's servant would come, while the meat was boiling, with a 3-pronged fork in his hand, and he would thrust it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot. All that the fork brought up the priest would take for himself. So they did at Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. Besides, before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the man who was sacrificing, Give meat for the priest to roast, for he will not accept boiled meat from you but only raw. And if the man said to him, Let them burn the fat first, and then take as much as your heart desires, then he would say, No, you must give it now, and if not, I will take it by force. Thus the sin of the young men was very great in the sight of the Lord, for the men treated the offering of the Lord with contempt. Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy clothed with a linen ephod. And his mother used to make for him a little robe and take it to him each year when she went up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice. Then Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, May the Lord give you children by this woman for the petition she asked of the Lord. So then they would return to their home. Indeed, the Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the boy Samuel grew in the presence of the Lord. Now Eli was very old, and he kept hearing all that his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who were serving at the entrance to the tent of meeting. And he said to them, Why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings from all these people. No, my sons, it is no good report that I hear the Lord's people spreading abroad. If someone sins against a man, God will mediate for him. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him? But they would not listen to the voice of their father, for it was the will of the Lord to put them to death. Now the boy Samuel continued to grow both in stature and in favor with the Lord and also with man. And there came a man of God to Eli and said to him, Thus says the Lord, Did I indeed reveal myself to the house of your father when they were in Egypt as slaves to the house of Pharaoh? And did I choose him out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to go up to my altar, to burn incense, to wear an ephod before me? I gave to the house of your father all my offerings by fire from the people of Israel. Why then do you scorn my sacrifices and my offerings that I commanded for my dwelling, and honor your sons above me by fattening yourselves on the choicest parts of every offering of my people Israel? Therefore the Lord God of Israel declares, I promised that your house and the house of your father should go in and out before me forever. But now the Lord declares, Far be it from me, for those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me shall be lightly esteemed. Behold, the days are coming when I will cut off your strength and the strength of your father's house, so that there will not be an old man in your house. Then in distress you will look with envious eye on all the prosperity that shall be bestowed on Israel, and there shall not be an old man in your house forever. The only one of you whom I shall not cut off from my altar shall be spared to weep out his eyes and grieve his heart, and all the descendants of your house shall die by the sword of men. And this shall be the sign to you that shall come upon your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas. In a single day both of them shall die. And I will raise up for myself a faithful priest, who shall do according to what is in my heart and in my mind. And I will build him a sure house, and he shall go in and out before my anointed forever. And everyone who is left in your house shall come to implore him for a piece of silver or a loaf of bread, and shall say, Please put me in one of the priest's places, that I may eat a morsel of bread. Chapter 3. Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord in the presence of Eli. And the word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was not frequent vision. At that time Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim so that he could not see, was lying down in his own place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel, and he said, Here I am, and ran to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call. Lie down again. So he went and lay down. And the Lord called again, Samuel. And Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call, my son. Lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. And the Lord called Samuel again the 3rd time. And he arose and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, Go lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, Speak, Lord, for your servant hears. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And the Lord came and stood, calling as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, Speak, for your servant hears. Then the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I am about to do a thing in Israel at which the 2 ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house, from beginning to end. And I declare to him that I am about to punish his house forever, for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by sacrifice or offering forever. Samuel lay until morning and opened the doors of the house of the Lord. And Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli. But Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. He said, Here I am. And he said, What was the word that he spoke to you? Do not hide it from me. May God do so to you and more also if you hide anything from me of all that he spoke to you. So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. And he said, It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established as a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord appeared again at Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel at Shiloh by the word of the Lord. Chapter 4. And the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out to battle against the Philistines. They encamped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped at Aphek. The Philistines drew up in line against Israel, and when the battle spread, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men on the field of battle. And when the people came to the camp, the elders of Israel said, Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies. So the people sent to Shiloh and brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. And the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. And when the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel gave a mighty shout, so that the earth resounded. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, What does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean? And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come to the camp, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, God has come into the camp. And they said, Woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us, who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Take courage and be men, O Philistines, lest you become slaves to the Hebrews as they have been to you. Act like men and fight. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and they fled, every man to his home. And there was a very great slaughter, for there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers. And the ark of God was captured, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were killed. Now a man of Benjamin ran from the battle line and came to Shiloh the same day, with his clothes torn and with dirt on his head. When he arrived, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road keeping watch, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. And when the man came into the city and told the news, all the city cried out. When Eli heard the sound of the outcry, he said, What is this uproar? Then the man hurried and came and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were set so that he could not see. And the man said to Eli, I am he who has come from the battle line, and I fled from the battle today. And he said, How did it go, my son? The messenger replied, Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has also been a great defeat among the people. Your two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured. As soon as he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell over backward from his seat by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken and he died, for the man was old and heavy. He had judged Israel 40 years. Now his daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant, about control 100 to give birth. And when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed and gave birth, for her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death the women attending her said to her, Do not be afraid, for you have borne a son. But she did not answer or pay attention. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, The glory has departed from Israel, because the ark of God had been captured, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured. Chapter 5. After the Philistines captured the ark of God, they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it into the house of Dagon and set it up beside Dagon. And when the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him back in his place. But when they rose early on the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off on the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. Therefore neither the priests nor all who enter the house of Dagon tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. The hand of the Lord was heavy against the people of Ashdod, and he terrified and afflicted them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territory. And when the men of Ashdod saw how things were, they said, The ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is hard against us and against Dagon our God. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistine and said, What shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? They answered, Let the ark of the God of Israel be brought around to Gath. So they brought the ark of the God of Israel there. But after they had brought it around, the hand of the Lord was against the city, causing a very great panic, and he afflicted the men of the city, both young and old, with tumors. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. And as the ark of God came to Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, They have brought around to us the ark of the God of Israel to kill us and our people. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, Send the ark of the God of Israel back to its place, that it may not kill us and our people. For there was a deadly panic throughout the whole city. The hand of God was very heavy there. The men who did not die were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city went up to heaven. Chapter 6. The ark of the Lord was in the country of the Philistines 7 months. And the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners and said, What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us with what we shall send it to its place. They said, If you send away the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it empty, but by all means return him a guilt offering. Then you will be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand does not turn away from you. And they said, What is the guilt offering that we shall return to him? They answered, 5 golden tumors and 5 golden mice, according the number of the lords of the Philistines. For the same plague was on all of you and on your lords. So you must make images of your tumors and images of your mice that ravage the land, and give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand from off you and your gods and your land. Why should you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? After he had dealt severely with them, did they not send the people away? And they, the first book of Samuel, chapter 1, tells the story of Elkanah, a man from Ramah in the hills of Ephraim, whose lineage traced back through Jeraham, Elihu, Tohu, and Zuph, all descendants of Ephraim. Elkanah had 2 wives, Peninnah and Hannah. Peninnah bore him children, a source of great joy and social standing in their community. Hannah, however, was barren, a condition that brought her immense sorrow and societal stigma. Each year, Elkanah would lead his family on a pilgrimage from their home to the sanctuary at Shiloh. There, they would worship the Almighty God and offer sacrifices in his honor. The sanctuary was also the place where the sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, served as priests, though their conduct would later prove to be far from righteous. When Elkanah presented his sacrificial offerings, he would apportion portions of the meat to Peninnah and her children, ensuring they received their due share. To Hannah, though, he gave a double portion, a gesture of his deep and abiding love for her, despite her inability to bear children. This act of love was often bittersweet, a reminder of what she lacked even amidst his affection. However, Peninnah, fueled by her own pride and perhaps societal expectations, relentlessly taunted Hannah about her barrenness. This went beyond simple teasing. It was a deliberate and cruel torment, designed to inflict maximum emotional pain. Peninnah's mockery was so severe that Hannah would weep and lose her appetite. The joy of the annual pilgrimage was overshadowed by the bitterness of her personal struggle. This pattern repeated itself year after year, each visit to the sanctuary becoming a fresh wound. One year, Elkanah, witnessing Hannah's distress, sought to comfort her. "Hannah, why do you weep?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "Why do you not eat? Why is your heart so grieved? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? Hannah, her heart heavy with sorrow, could find no solace in his words. She quietly excused herself from the meal and went to the sanctuary to pray. Eli, the priest, was sitting on a chair near the entrance, observing the worshippers. Hannah, overwhelmed by her grief, wept bitterly as she prayed to God, pouring out her soul in desperation. She made a solemn vow, a heartfelt promise born of deep longing and unwavering faith. "O Lord of hosts," she prayed, her voice choked with emotion, "if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give your servant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head." Hannah prayed silently, her lips moving but no sound escaping. Eli, watching her, noticed her silent supplication but, misunderstanding her demeanor, jumped to a hasty conclusion. "How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself?" Eli demanded, his voice stern. "Put away your wine." Hannah, taken aback by his harsh accusation, quickly defended herself. "No, my lord," she replied, her voice trembling. "I am a woman deeply troubled. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation." Eli, realizing his mistake and touched by her sincerity, offered a blessing. "Go in peace," he said, "and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him. May your servant find favor in your sight," Hannah replied, her heart lifting with renewed hope. With a lighter heart, Hannah returned, ate, and her face was no longer downcast. The next morning, Elkanah and his family rose early and worshipped before the Lord. Then they returned to their home in Ramah. In time, God remembered Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, explaining, "Because I have asked for him from the Lord." When the time came for the annual pilgrimage, Elkanah prepared to go to Shiloh with his family to offer the customary sacrifice and fulfill his vows. However, Hannah decided to stay behind, nursing Samuel until he was weaned. "I will not go up until the child is weaned," she told Elkanah. "Then I will take him, that he may appear before the Lord and remain there forever." Elkanah, understanding and supportive, agreed. "Do what seems best to you," he said. "Remain here until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord establish his word." So Hannah stayed and nursed her son until he was weaned. When Samuel was old enough, Hannah took him to the sanctuary at Shiloh, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought Samuel to Eli. "Oh, my Lord," Hannah said, her voice filled with emotion. "As surely as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who was standing here in your presence, praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition that I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord." And they worshipped the Lord there. Chapter 2 begins with Hannah's prayer, a beautiful song of praise and thanksgiving. "My heart exults in the Lord," she sang. "My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth speaks boldly against my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the strong are broken, but those who were feeble gird on strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. The barren has borne 7, but she who has many children is forlorn. The Lord kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked shall be cut off in darkness. For not by might shall a man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Against them he will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. After this, Elkanah returned home to Ramah, but the boy Samuel ministered to the Lord before Eli the priest. Now the sons of Eli were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. This was evident in their dealings with the sacrificial offerings. By custom, the priest was entitled to a portion of the boiled meat. However, Eli's sons were not content with this. Before the fat was burned, a servant would come and demand raw meat for the priest, claiming that he would not accept cooked meat. If the offerer protested, pointing out that the fat needed to be burned first, the servant would retort, "Give it now, or I will take it by force." This sinful behavior was deeply offensive to God and a grave disservice to the people. Furthermore, the sons of Eli would use a 3-pronged fork to take whatever they wanted from the pot, further demonstrating their greed and disregard for proper procedure. Young Samuel, in stark contrast, ministered before the Lord, wearing a linen ephod, a simple garment worn by priests. Each year, his mother would make him a little robe and bring it to him when she came with her husband to offer the annual sacrifice. During one of these visits, Eli blessed Elkanah and his wife, saying, "May the Lord repay you with children by this woman for the gift that she made to the Lord." And the Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the boy Samuel grew in the presence of the Lord. Eli, now very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to Israel. He confronted them, expressing his dismay and concern. "Why do you do such things?" he asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. "For I hear of your evil dealings from all these people. No, my sons. It is no good report that I hear the Lord's people spreading abroad. If someone sins against a man, God will mediate for him. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him? But they would not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor both with the Lord and with man. A man of God came to Eli and delivered a stern message from the Lord. The message recounted how God had revealed himself to Eli's ancestors when they were slaves in Egypt. God had chosen Eli's family to be his priests, granting them the privilege of offering sacrifices, burning incense, and wearing the priestly garments. Why then do you scorn my sacrifices and my offerings that I commanded for my dwelling, and honor your sons above me by fattening yourselves on the choicest parts of every offering of my people Israel? The Lord declared that he would revoke his promise that Eli's descendants would serve as priests forever. He would honor those who honored him, but those who despised him would be lightly esteemed. The days were coming when Eli's family would lose its strength, and none of his descendants would live to old age. The few who remained would suffer greatly and die young. This would be a sign that everything God had spoken would come to pass. Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, would die on the same day. The Lord would raise up a faithful priest who would act according to his heart and mind. He would establish his house forever, and he would minister before the Lord's anointed. Those who survived from Eli's family would beg for a pittance, seeking any priestly task to earn a meager living. Chapter 3 describes how, in those days, the word of the Lord was rare, and visions were infrequent. Young Samuel was ministering before the Lord under Eli's direction, who was now nearly blind. One night, before the lamp of God had gone out in the temple, the Lord called to Samuel. Eli and Samuel were lying down, each in his own place. Samuel was sleeping in the temple, where the ark of God was. "Samuel, Samuel," the Lord called. Samuel ran to Eli and said, "Here I am." Eli replied, "I did not call you. Lie down again." So Samuel went and lay down. The Lord called again, "Samuel." Again Samuel arose and went to Eli, saying, "Here I am, for you called me." But Eli said, "I did not call you, my son. Lie down again." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The Lord called Samuel a 3rd time. Samuel arose and went to Eli, saying, "Here I am, for you called me." Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, "Go lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant hears.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And the Lord came and stood, calling as at other times, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant hears." Then the Lord said to Samuel, "Behold, I am about to do a thing in Israel at which the 2 ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house, from beginning to end. For I told him that I would judge his house forever, for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by sacrifice or offering forever." Samuel lay down until morning. Then he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. But Samuel was afraid to tell Eli the vision. But Eli called Samuel and said, "Samuel, my son." Samuel said, "Here I am." And Eli said, "What was the word that he spoke to you? Do not hide it from me. May God do so to you and more also if you hide anything from me of all that he spoke to you." So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. And Eli said, "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established as a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord appeared again at Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel at Shiloh by the word of the Lord. Chapter 4 recounts how the Israelites went out to battle against the Philistines, camping at Ebenezer. The Philistines encamped at Aphek and drew up their lines to attack Israel. The battle was joined, and the Philistines defeated the Israelites, killing about 4,000 men on the battlefield. When the troops returned to their camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines?" "Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies." So the people sent to Shiloh and brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. As soon as the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel gave a mighty shout, so that the earth resounded. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, "What does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come to the camp, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "God has come into the camp." And they said, "Woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us, who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Take courage and be men, O Philistines, lest you become slaves to the Hebrews as they have been to you. Quit yourselves like men and fight." So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and they fled, every man to his home. And there was a very great slaughter, for there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers. And the ark of God was captured, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were killed. That day a man from Benjamin ran from the battle line and came to Shiloh with his clothes torn and with dirt on his head. When he arrived, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road, watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. And when the man came into the city and told the news, all the city cried out. When Eli heard the sound of the outcry, he said, "What is this uproar?" Then the man hurried and came and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were set so that he could not see. And the man said to Eli, "I am he who has come from the battle line, and I fled from the battle today." And he said, "How did it go, my son?" The messenger answered and said, "Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has also been a great defeat among the people. Your two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." As soon as he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell over backward from his seat by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died, for the man was old and heavy. He had judged Israel 40 years. Now his daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant and about to give birth. And when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed and gave birth, for her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death the women attending her said to her, "Do not be afraid, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer or pay attention. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel," because the ark of God had been captured, and because of the death of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." Chapter 5 details the Philistines' actions after capturing the Ark of the Covenant. After the Philistines had taken the Ark of God, they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then the Philistines took the Ark of God and brought it into the house of Dagon and set it up beside Dagon. And when the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the Ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him back in his place. But when they rose early on the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off on the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. Therefore the priests of Dagon and all who enter the house of Dagon do not tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. The hand of the Lord was heavy against the people of Ashdod, and he terrified and afflicted them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territory. And when the men of Ashdod saw how things were, they said, "The ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is hard against us and against Dagon our God." So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, "What shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel?" They answered, "Let the ark of the God of Israel be brought to Gath." So they brought the ark of the God of Israel there. But after they had brought it there, the hand of the Lord was against the city, causing a very great panic, and he afflicted the people of the city, both young and old, with outbreaks of tumors. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. And as the ark of God came to Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, "They have brought around to us the ark of the God of Israel to kill us and our people." So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, "Send the ark of the God of Israel back to its place, that it may not kill us and our people." For there was a deadly panic throughout the whole city. The hand of God was very heavy there. The men who did not die were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city went up to heaven. Chapter 6 tells of the Philistines' decision to return the ark, along with a guilt offering. After the ark of the Lord had been in the country of the Philistines 7 months, the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners and said, "What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how we should send it back to its place." They said, "If you send away the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it empty, but by all means return him a guilt offering. Then you will be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand does not turn away from you." And they said, "What is the guilt offering that we shall return to him?" They answered, 5 golden tumors and 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines. For the same plague was on all of you and on your lords. So you must make images of your tumors and images. The first book of Samuel, chapter 1. In Ramah, nestled within the hills of Ephraim, resided a man named Elkanah. His lineage traced back through Jeraham, Elihu, Tohu, and Zuph, all descendants of Ephraim. Elkanah had 2 wives, Peninnah and Hannah. Peninnah was blessed with children, while Hannah remained barren, a source of deep sorrow for her. Each year, Elkanah and his family would journey from their village to the sanctuary in Shiloh. There, they would worship the Almighty God and present offerings in his honor. The sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, served as priests at the sanctuary. When Elkanah presented his animal sacrifice, he would apportion a share of the meat to Peninnah and her children. However, to Hannah he gave a double portion, for he loved her dearly, despite the Lord's closing of her womb. But Peninnah, fueled by her own fertility, would relentlessly taunt Hannah about her barrenness. She would provoke her year after year, intensifying Hannah's grief to the point where she would weep inconsolably and lose her appetite. During one of these annual visits, Elkanah, noticing Hannah's distress, inquired, "Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart so grieved? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" Hannah, her heart heavy, rose from the table and went to the sanctuary to pray. Eli the priest was sitting on a chair near the doorpost. Overwhelmed with sorrow, she wept bitterly as she poured out her soul to the Lord, making a solemn vow. "O Lord of hosts," she prayed, her voice choked with emotion, "if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head." As Hannah prayed silently, her lips moving but her voice inaudible, Eli observed her. Noticing her appearance and slurred movements, he suspected she was drunk. "How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself?" he chided. "Put away your wine." Hannah, taken aback by his accusation, replied, "No, my lord, I am a woman deeply troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your maidservant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation." Eli, realizing his mistake and moved by her sincerity, responded, "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him." Hannah replied, "Let your maidservant find favor in your sight." With newfound hope, she went her way, ate, and her face was no longer sad. The following morning, Elkanah and his family rose early and worshipped the Lord. Then they returned to their home in Ramah. And the Lord remembered Hannah. In due time, she conceived and bore a son, and she named him Samuel, saying, "Because I have asked for him from the Lord." The following year, when it was time for Elkanah to go up to Shiloh with his family to offer the annual sacrifice and fulfill his vow, Hannah did not go. She told her husband, "As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever." Elkanah said to her, "Do what seems best to you. Remain here until you have weaned him, only may the Lord establish his word. So Hannah remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. When Samuel was weaned, Hannah took him up with her to Shiloh, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. She brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh, and the child was young. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. And Hannah said, "Oh, my Lord, as surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For all his life he is given over to the Lord." And they worshipped the Lord there. Chapter 2. Then Hannah prayed and said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth speaks boldly against my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, but those who stumbled are armed with strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. Even the barren has borne 7, but she who has many children languishes. The Lord kills and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and lifts up. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the beggar from the ash heap, to set them among princes and make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set the world upon them. He will guard the feet of his saints, but the wicked shall be silent in darkness. For by strength shall no man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken in pieces. From heaven he will thunder against them. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king, and exalt the horn of his anointed. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah, but the boy ministered to the Lord before Eli the priest. Now the sons of Eli were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. They were helping themselves to the offering. Whenever anyone was offering a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a 3-pronged fork in his hand. While the meat was still boiling, he would plunge the fork into the pan or kettle or pot. Whatever the fork brought up, the priest would claim for himself. This is how they treated all the Israelites who came to Shiloh. Even before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the man who was sacrificing, "Give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, but only raw." If the man said to him, "Let the fat be burned first and then take whatever you want," the servant would answer, "No, hand it over now. If you don't, I'll take it by force." Thus, the sin of the young men was very great in the sight of the Lord, for they treated the Lord's offering with contempt. But Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod. Each year his mother made him a little robe and took it to him when she went up with her husband to offer the annual sacrifice. Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, saying, "May the Lord give you children by this woman for the petition she asked of the Lord." Then they would go to their home. And the Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the boy Samuel grew in the presence of the Lord. Now Eli was very old. He heard about everything his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they were sleeping with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. So he said to them, "Why do you do such things? I hear from all these people about your wicked deeds. No, my sons. The report I hear spreading among the Lord's people is not good. If one person sins against another, God may mediate for the offender. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede?" But they would not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and favor with the Lord and with people. Now a man of God came to Eli and said to him, "This is what the Lord says. Did I not clearly reveal myself to your ancestors' family when they were in Egypt under Pharaoh? I chose your ancestor out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to go up to my altar, to burn incense, and to wear an ephod in my presence. And I gave your ancestors' family all the offerings made by the Israelites. Why do you scorn my sacrifice and offering that I prescribed for my dwelling? Why do you honor your sons more than me by fattening yourselves on the choice parts of every offering made by my people Israel? Therefore, the Lord God of Israel declares, I promised that your family and your ancestors' family would minister before me forever. But now the Lord declares, far be it from me. Those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me will be disdained. A time is coming when I will cut short your strength and the strength of your ancestors' family, so that there will not be an old man in your family line. And you will see distress in my dwelling. Although good will be done to Israel, no one in your family line will ever reach old age. Every one of you that I do not cut off from my altar will live only to consume your eyes and grieve your heart, and all your descendants will die in the prime of life. And what happens to your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will be a sign to you. They will both die on the same day. Then I will raise up for myself a faithful priest, who will do according to what is in my heart and mind. I will firmly establish his priestly house, and they will minister before my anointed one always. Then everyone left in your family line will come and bow down before him for a piece of silver or a loaf of bread and plead, appoint me to some priestly office so I can have food to eat. Chapter 3. In those days the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. Eli, whose eyesight was failing, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel. Samuel answered, Here I am. And he ran to Eli and said, Here I am. You called me. But Eli said, I did not call you. Go back and lie down. So he went and lay down. Again the Lord called, Samuel. And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, Here I am. You called me. My son, Eli said, I did not call you. Go back and lie down. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord. The word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The Lord called Samuel a 3rd time, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, Here I am. You called me. Then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. The Lord came and stood there, calling as at the other times, Samuel, Samuel. Then Samuel said, Speak, for your servant is listening. And the Lord said to Samuel, See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of everyone who hears about it tingle. At that time I will carry out against Eli everything I spoke against his family, from beginning to end. For I told him that I would judge his family forever because of the sin he knew about. His sons blasphemed God, and he failed to restrain them. Therefore, I have sworn to the house of Eli that the guilt of Eli's house will never be atoned for by sacrifice or offering. Samuel lay down until morning and then opened the doors of the house of the Lord. He was afraid to tell Eli the vision. But Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. Samuel answered, Here I am. What was it he said to you? Eli asked. Do not hide it from me. May God punish you. May he punish you severely, if you hide from me anything he told you. So Samuel told him everything, hiding nothing from him. Then Eli said, He is the Lord. Let him do what is good in his eyes. And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh, and there he revealed himself to Samuel through his word. And Samuel's word came to all Israel. Chapter 4. And the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now the Israelites went out to fight against the Philistines. The Israelites camped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines at Aphek. The Philistines deployed their forces to meet Israel, and as the battle spread, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 of them on the battlefield. When the soldiers returned to camp, the elders of Israel asked, Why did the Lord bring defeat on us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the Lord's covenant from Shiloh, so that he may come among us and save us from the hand of our enemies. So the people sent men to Shiloh, and they brought back the ark of the covenant of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim. And Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. When the ark of the Lord's covenant came into the camp, all Israel raised such a great shout that the ground shook. Hearing the uproar, the Philistines asked, "What's all this shouting in the Hebrew camp?" When they learned that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp, the Philistines were afraid. "A god has come into the camp," they said. "We're in trouble. Nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us! Who will deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. Be strong, Philistines. Be men, or you will be subject to the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Be men and fight." So the Philistines fought, and the Israelites were defeated and fled to their tents. The slaughter was very great. 30,000 Israelites fell. The ark of God was captured, and Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were killed. That day a Benjamite ran from the battle line and went to Shiloh with his clothes torn and dust on his head. When he arrived, there was Eli sitting on his chair by the side of the road, watching because his heart feared for the ark of God. When the man entered the town and told what had happened, the whole town sent up a cry. Eli heard the outcry and asked, "What is the meaning of this uproar?" The man hurried over to Eli, who was 98 years old and whose eyes were set so that he could not see. He said to Eli, "I have just come from the battle line. I fled from it this very day." Eli asked, "What happened, my son?" The man replied, "Israel fled before the Philistines, and the army has suffered heavy losses. Also, your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backward off his chair by the side of the gate. His neck was broken and he died, for he was an old man and heavy. He had led Israel 40 years. His daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant and near delivery. When she heard the news that the ark of God had been captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she went into labor and gave birth, but was overcome by labor pains. As she was dying, the women attending her said, "Don't despair. You have given birth to a son." But she did not respond or pay any attention. She named the boy Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel, because of the capture of the ark of God and the deaths of her father-in-law and her husband." She added, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." Chapter 5. After the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then they carried the ark into Dagon's temple and set it beside Dagon. When the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon, fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him back in his place. But the following morning when they rose, there was Dagon, fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of the Lord. His head and hands had been broken off and were lying on the threshold. Only his body remained. That is why to this day neither the priests of Dagon nor any others who enter Dagon's temple tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod. The Lord's hand was heavy on the people of Ashdod and its vicinity. He brought devastation on them and afflicted them with tumors. When the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of the God of Israel must not stay here with us, because his hand is heavy on us and on our god Dagon." So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and asked them, "What shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel?" They answered, "Have the ark of the God of Israel moved to Gath." So they moved the ark of the God of Israel. But after they had moved it, the Lord's hand was against that city, throwing it into a great panic. He afflicted the people of the city, both young and old, with an outbreak of tumors. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. As the ark of God was entering Ekron, the people there cried out, "They have brought the ark of the God of Israel around to us to kill us and our people." So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and said, "Send the ark of the God of Israel back to its place, so that it won't kill us and our people." For death had filled the city. God's hand was very heavy on it. Those who did not die were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city went up to heaven. Chapter 6. After the ark of the Lord had been in Philistine territory 7 months, The Philistines called for the priests and the diviners and said, "What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how to send it back to its place." They answered, "If you return the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it back empty, but be sure to send him a guilt offering. Then you will be healed, and you will know why his hand has not been lifted from you." The Philistines asked, "What guilt offering should we send to him?" They replied, 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats, according to the number of the Philistine rulers, because the same plague has struck both you and your rulers. Make models of the tumors and of the rats that are destroying the country, and pay honor to Israel's God. Perhaps he will lift his hand from you, your gods, and your land. Why be stubborn as Pharaoh and the Egyptians were? When he treated them harshly, did they not send the Israelites out? Now then, get a new cart ready, with 2 cows that have calved and have never been yoked. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take their calves away and pen them up. Take the ark of the Lord and put it on the cart, and put the gold objects in a chest beside it as a guilt offering. Send it on its way, but keep watching it. If it goes up to its own territory, toward Beth Shemesh, then the Lord has brought this great disaster on us. But if it does not, then we will know that it was not his hand that struck us and that it happened to us by chance. So they did this. They took 2 such cows and hitched them to the cart and penned up their calves. They placed the ark of the Lord on the cart and put in the chest beside it the gold rats and the models of the tumors. Then the cows went straight up the road to Beth Shemesh and kept on lowing as they went. They did not turn to the right or to the left. The rulers of the Philistines followed them as far as the border of Beth Shemesh. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting their wheat in the valley, and when they looked up and saw the ark, they rejoiced at seeing it. The cart came to the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh, and it stopped there beside a large rock. Then the people chopped up the wood of the cart and sacrificed the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites had taken down the ark of the Lord and the chest with the gold objects and placed them on the large rock. The priests carefully lowered the ark of the covenant of God and the chest containing the golden images onto the large rock. The Israelites then took the cart, chopped it into firewood, and sacrificed the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord, a testament to their renewed faith. Additional offerings were presented to God that day, signaling a return to divine worship and seeking atonement for past transgressions. The 5 Philistine rulers observed these proceedings from a distance, their expressions unreadable. After witnessing the events unfold, they returned to Ekron, the seat of their authority and a hub of Philistine power. The Philistines, bound by their Pentapolis, a league of 5 major cities, Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, sought to appease the God of Israel with a token of their submission. For each of these cities, the Philistine leaders sent a golden image as an offering, seeking to atone for their defiance. They further included a golden rat for every town and village, acknowledging the plague that had afflicted their land. These offerings were not merely material but symbolic, representing a desperate attempt to end the suffering they had endured and seek favor from a power they did not fully comprehend. The large stone upon which the Ark of the Covenant had been placed remained in the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh as a testament to the events. However, the return of the Ark brought unintended consequences. When the Ark resided in Beth Shemesh, God struck down 70 men who dared to gaze inside it, a display of divine power. The people of the town wept in mourning and fear, recognizing the gravity of their actions. "No one can live before a God as powerful as ours," they cried. "It is better that we send the ark to another place." Nearby lay the village of Kiriath Jearim. Messengers were dispatched to its inhabitants with urgency. "The Philistines have returned the ark of the covenant of God to us," they exclaimed. "Come and get it." Chapter 7. The inhabitants of Kiriath Jearim took the ark of the covenant of God and placed it in the house of Abinadab, a devout man whose home rested upon a hill, offering a place of prominence and respect. They consecrated Abinadab's son, Eleazar, to care for the ark, entrusting him with a sacred duty. The ark remained in Kiriath Jearim for 20 years. During this time, the people of Israel lamented their past transgressions and sought the Lord with renewed fervor. Samuel, the prophet, witnessing the Israelites' remorse, exhorted them to genuine repentance. "If you truly desire to return to the Lord with all your hearts," Samuel proclaimed, "then put away the foreign gods and the images of Baal and Ashtoreth from among you. Direct your hearts to the Lord and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines." The Israelites heeded Samuel's words and abandoned the worship of idols, turning their hearts solely toward the God of Israel. Samuel then called for a national assembly. "Gather all Israel at Mizpah," he commanded, "and I will pray to the Lord on your behalf." The Israelites gathered at Mizpah, a place of strategic importance and spiritual significance. They acknowledged their sin against the Lord, drawing water and pouring it out before him as an offering of repentance. They fasted that day, demonstrating their humility and earnest desire for forgiveness. It was at Mizpah that Samuel began to judge and govern the Israelites, guiding them back to the ways of the Lord. When the Philistine leaders learned that the Israelites had assembled at Mizpah, they resolved to attack them, seeing this gathering as an act of rebellion and a threat to their dominance. Upon hearing of the Philistine advance, the Israelites were filled with fear, their past defeats haunting them. "Do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us," they pleaded with Samuel, "that he may save us from the hand of the Philistines." Samuel took a young lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord, interceding for his people with fervent prayer. As he sacrificed the lamb, the Philistines drew near to engage Israel in battle. But the Lord heard Samuel's prayer and unleashed a powerful thunderstorm, the likes of which they had never witnessed. Terrifying thunder clapped and echoed through the valley. The Philistines, overwhelmed by the noise and the sheer force of nature, panicked and fled in disarray. The Israelites, emboldened by the divine intervention, pursued the Philistines from Mizpah to below Beth-kar, inflicting a decisive defeat. Samuel then took a large stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shen. He named it Ebenezer, declaring, "Thus far the Lord has helped us," a permanent reminder of God's faithfulness and power. Throughout Samuel's lifetime, the Lord's hand was against the Philistines, preventing them from invading the territory of Israel. The Israelites recovered the cities and territories that the Philistines had seized, from Ekron to Gath, restoring their borders. Peace reigned between Israel and the Amorites, the indigenous people of the land. Each year, Samuel made a circuit of the towns of Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, judging Israel and resolving their disputes. He returned to Ramah, where his home was located, and where he had built an altar to the Lord, reaffirming his devotion and leadership. Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life, faithfully guiding them in the ways of the Lord. Chapter 8. Samuel had 2 sons, Joel and Abijah. As Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges over Israel, entrusting them with the responsibility of upholding justice and righteousness. However, Samuel's sons did not follow in his upright footsteps. They were corrupt and unjust, accepting bribes and perverting justice. If 2 people argued over something and sought them out to see who was right, they always helped whoever gave them money. Because of their corruption, all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah, seeking change and honest leadership. "You are old," they said to Samuel, "and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." This request displeased Samuel greatly. He saw it as a rejection of God's sovereignty and a betrayal of their unique covenant relationship. But he turned to the Lord in prayer, seeking guidance and wisdom. The Lord responded to Samuel, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they are rejecting, but they are rejecting me as their king. Ever since the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, they have forsaken me and served other gods. So they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights." Samuel related all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He warned them of the oppressive nature of kingship. "This is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers, He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants. Your male and female servants and your best cattle and donkeys he will take for his own use. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day." But the people refused to listen to Samuel's warnings. They were determined to have a king, rejecting God's rule and seeking conformity with the nations around them. "No," they said, "we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to govern us and to go out before us and fight our battles." When Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. The Lord answered Samuel, "Listen to them and give them a king." Then Samuel said to the Israelites, "Everyone go back to your own town." Chapter 9. There was a wealthy and influential man named Kish, the son of Abel, the son of Zerah, the son of Becherath, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite. Kish had a son named Saul, an impressive young man. There was no one among the Israelites more handsome than he was, and he stood head and shoulders above anyone else. One day, Kish's donkeys strayed away. Kish instructed his son Saul to find the lost animals. "Take one of the servants with you and go look for the donkeys," Kish said to his son Saul. Saul and his servant traversed the hill country of Ephraim and through the region of Shalisha, Shalim and Benjamin, but they did not find the donkeys. When they came to the region of Zuph, Saul decided to turn back. "We should return," Saul said to his servant, "or my father will stop thinking about the donkeys and start worrying about us." But his servant replied, "Look, in this town there is a man of God. He is highly respected, and everything he says comes true. Let's go there now. Perhaps he can tell us what way to take." Saul considered this suggestion, but voiced his concern. "If we go, what can we give him?" Saul asked. "The food in our sacks is gone. We have no gift to take to the man of God. What do we have?" The servant then revealed that he had a small piece of silver. "Look," the servant said, "I have 1/4 of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God so he will tell us our way." Saul agreed to the plan. "Very well," Saul said. "Let's go." In earlier times in Israel, if someone went to inquire of God, they would say, "Let's go to the seer," because the prophet of today used to be called a seer. Saul and his servant started up the hill toward the town. As they approached the town, they encountered some young women coming out to draw water. "Is the seer here?" they asked. "He is," they replied. "He's ahead of you. Hurry now. He has just come to our town today, for the people have a sacrifice at the high place. As soon as you enter the town, you will find him before he goes up to the high place to eat. The people will not begin eating until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice. Afterward, those who are invited will eat. Go up now, you should find him about this time." Now the Lord had revealed to Samuel a day before Saul came. "About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him ruler over my people Israel. He will deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines. I have looked on my people, for their cry has reached me." When Samuel caught sight of Saul, the Lord said to him, "This is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people." Saul approached Samuel in the gateway and asked, "Would you please tell me where the seer's house is?" "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "Go up ahead of me to the high place, for today you are to eat with me, and in the morning I will send you on your way and will tell you all that is in your heart. As for those donkeys you lost 3 days ago, do not worry about them. They have been found. And to whom is all Israel's desire directed, if not to you and all your father's family?" Saul, taken aback by Samuel's words, responded with humility, "But am I not a Benjamite, from the smallest tribe of Israel, and is not my clan the least important of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why are you saying such things to me?" Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant into the hall and seated them at the head of those who were invited, about 30 in number. Samuel said to the cook, "Bring the piece of meat I gave you, the one I told you to set aside." So the cook took up the leg of mutton and set it before Saul. Samuel said, Here is what has been kept for you. Eat, because it was set aside for you for this occasion from the time I said, I have invited guests. And Saul ate with Samuel that day. After they came down from the high place to the town, Samuel spoke with Saul at the rooftop. As the rooftop was the coolest place to sleep, they prepared a bed for Saul there. And Saul fell asleep. The next day in the morning, Samuel went up to the rooftop and said to Saul, Get up now, it is time for you to return home. Saul got up and went out with Samuel. As they were leaving the city, Samuel said to Saul, Tell the servant to go on ahead of us, because I have a message from God for you. Chapter 10. Once the servant left, Samuel took a flask of olive oil and poured it on Saul's head, anointing him as the chosen one. He then kissed him, bestowing a symbol of blessing and authority. Has not the Lord anointed you ruler over his inheritance? Samuel declared. When you leave me today, you will meet 2 men near Rachel's tomb, at Zelzah in the territory of Benjamin. They will say to you, The donkeys you set out to find have been found, and now your father has stopped thinking about them and is worried about you. He is asking, What shall I do about my son? Then you will go on from there until you reach the great tree of Tabor. 3 men going up to God at Bethel will meet you there. One will be carrying 3 young goats, another 3 loaves of bread, and another a skin of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 loaves of bread, which you will accept from them. After that you will go to Gibeah of God, where there is a Philistine outpost. As you approach the town, you will meet a procession of prophets coming down from the high place with lyres, timbrels, pipes, and harps being played before them, and they will be prophesying. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person. Once these signs are fulfilled, do whatever your hand finds to do, for God is with you. Go down ahead of me to Gilgal. I will surely come down to you to sacrifice burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, but you must wait 7 days, until I come to you and tell you what you are to do. As Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Saul's heart, imbuing him with a newfound sense of purpose and destiny. All these signs came to pass that day. When Saul and his servant arrived at Gibeah, a procession of prophets met him. The Spirit of God came powerfully upon Saul, and he joined them in prophesying, his voice resonating with divine inspiration. All those who had formerly known him were amazed, bewildered at this transformation. What is this that has happened to the son of Kish? They asked each other. Is Saul also among the prophets? Where did these prophets come from? Is he also a prophet now? So it was that the saying, Is Saul also among the prophets? Became a proverb. After Saul stopped prophesying, he went to the high place. Saul's uncle asked him and his servant, Where have you been? Looking for the donkeys, he replied. When we did not find them, we went to Samuel. Tell me, his uncle said, what did Samuel say to you? Saul did not tell him what Samuel had said about the kingship, concealing the secret of his anointing. He assured us that the donkeys had been found, Saul replied, dismissing his uncle's probing questions. Some days later, Samuel summoned the people of Israel to Mizpah and spoke to them before the Lord. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, I brought Israel up out of Egypt, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and of all the kingdoms that were oppressing you. But you have now rejected your God, who saves you out of all your calamities and distresses. And you have said, No, set a king over us. So now present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and clans. When Samuel brought all the tribes of Israel near, the tribe of Benjamin was chosen by lot. Then he brought forward the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan, and the clan of Matri was chosen. Finally Saul son of Kish was chosen. But when they looked for him, he was not to be found. So they inquired further of the Lord, Has the man come here yet? And the Lord said, Yes, he is hidden among the baggage. They ran and brought him out of there, and as he stood among the people, he was a head taller than any of the others. Samuel said to all the people, Do you see the man the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among all the people. Then the people shouted, Long live the king! Samuel explained to the people the regulations of the kingship. He wrote them down on a scroll and deposited it before the Lord. Then Samuel dismissed the people to go to their own homes. Saul also went to his home in Gibeah, accompanied by valiant men whose hearts God had touched. But some troublemakers said, "How can this fellow save us?" They despised him and brought him no gifts. But Saul kept silent, refraining from any show of authority. Chapter 11. Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead. The men of Jabesh said to Nahash, "Make a treaty with us, and we will be subject to you." But Nahash the Ammonite replied, "I will make a treaty with you only on the condition that I gouge out the right eye of every one of you and so bring disgrace on all Israel." The elders of Jabesh said to him, "Give us 7 days so we can send messengers throughout Israel. If no one comes to rescue us, we will surrender to you." When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and reported these terms to the people, they all wept aloud. Just then Saul was returning from the fields, driving his oxen, and he asked, "What is wrong with everyone? Why are they weeping?" They told him what the men of Jabesh Gilead had said. When Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he burned with anger. He took a yoke of oxen and cut them into pieces, and he sent the pieces by messengers throughout Israel, proclaiming, "If anyone does not march out after Saul and Samuel, this is what will be done to their oxen." The terror of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out together as one. When Saul mustered them at Bezek, the men of Israel numbered 300,000 and the men of Judah 30,000. They told the messengers who had come to Jabesh Gilead, "Tomorrow, by the time the sun is hot, you will be delivered." When the messengers went and reported this to the men of Jabesh, they were elated. So they said to the Ammonites, "Tomorrow we will surrender to you, and you can do to us whatever seems good to you." The next day Saul separated his men into 3 divisions. During the last watch of the night they broke into the camp of the Ammonites and slaughtered them until the heat of the day. Those who survived were scattered, so that no 2 of them were left together. The people then said to Samuel, "Who was it that asked, 'Shall Saul reign over us?' Bring them here so we can put them to death." But Saul said, "No one shall be put to death this day, for this day the Lord has rescued Israel." Then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal and there reaffirm the kingship." So all the people went to Gilgal and confirmed Saul as king in the presence of the Lord. There they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites held a great celebration. Chapter 12. Samuel addressed the people, reminding them of his blameless leadership and challenging them to voice any grievance they might have against him. "I have listened to everything you asked of me and have set a king over you. Now you have a king as your leader. As for me, I am old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I have been your leader from my youth until this day. Here I stand. Testify against me in the presence of the Lord and his anointed king. Whose ox have I stolen? Whose donkey have I taken? Whom have I cheated? Whom have I oppressed? From whose hand have I accepted a bribe to cover up wrongdoing? If I have done any of these things, I will make it right." "You have not cheated or oppressed us," they replied. "You have not taken anything from anyone's hand." Samuel said to them, "The Lord is witness against you, and so is his anointed king this day, that you have not found anything in my hand." "He is witness," they said. Then Samuel delivered a powerful sermon, recounting God's acts of deliverance and warning the people against future disobedience. "It is the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your ancestors up out of Egypt. Now then, stand here, because I am going to confront you with all the wrong things the Lord has done in your sight for you and your ancestors. After Jacob entered Egypt, your ancestors cried to the Lord for help, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought them out of Egypt and settled them in this place. But they forgot the Lord their God, so he sold them into the hand of Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, into the hand of the Philistines, and into the hand of the king of Moab, who fought against them. They cried out to the Lord and said, 'We have sinned. We have forsaken the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtoreths. But now deliver us from the hand of our enemies, and we will serve you.' Then the Lord sent Jerubbaal, Barak, Jephthah, and Samuel, and he delivered you from the hands of your enemies on every side, so that you lived securely. But when you saw that Nahash king of the Ammonites was advancing against you, you said to me, 'No, we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king.' Then Samuel said, 'We will worship only him.' God sent Jerubbaal, Bedan, and Jephthah, and me as well, to deliver you from the power of your enemies. Because of this, you now live in peace. Remember when you knew that Nahash, the king of the Ammonites, was going to attack you, you asked me to give you a king, even though the Lord your God, the very God who rescued our people from Egypt, was already your king." Samuel paused, letting his words sink into the crowd. "Well, our God has now given you the king you requested. If you and your king obey and serve only God, he will bless you, and you will live in peace. But if you do not obey him, then he will punish you as he did your ancestors." He raised his voice, preparing them for what was to come. "Prepare yourselves, because at this moment, our God is going to perform a miracle before our very eyes. As you know, this is the time of harvest, not the rainy season. However, I am going to ask God to send rain and thunder. In doing so, God will show you how wicked you were to ask for a king." Samuel, his voice filled with conviction, then prayed to the Lord to send rain and thunder. And God did just as he asked. The sky, once a clear and vibrant blue, suddenly darkened with heavy clouds. A low rumble echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. Soon, the heavens opened, and rain poured down in torrents, accompanied by deafening thunder and flashes of lightning that illuminated the terrified faces of the Israelites. Seeing what God and Samuel had done, the Israelites were filled with great fear. They cried out to Samuel, "We have been very rebellious, even to the point of demanding a king. Plead with God not to take our lives." Samuel, his face etched with concern, replied, "Do not be afraid. Although you have done wrong, do not stop obeying and loving God. Instead, serve him willingly and do not worship those hollow and empty idols that cannot do you any good or help you. God will not reject you, for that would reflect poorly on him before the other nations. Besides, he desired that you be his own people. As for me," Samuel declared, "I will never stop praying to God for you. To stop would be a sin. I will always teach you to behave well and to live as God wants you to. You know well all the good that God has done for you. Therefore, obey him and serve him always willingly. If you do not, both you and your king will die." Chapter 13. Saul was already an adult when he began to reign. In the second year of his reign, he chose 3,000 men from Israel to form his own army. Of these, 2,000 were with him in Michmash and in the hills of Bethel, while the other 1,000 were with his son Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. The rest of the Israelites he sent back home. Jonathan, eager to prove himself, attacked and destroyed a Philistine outpost that was in Geba. When the Philistines heard about this attack, Saul had the trumpet blown throughout the land as a signal of alarm, proclaiming, "Hear, Israelites, Saul has destroyed a Philistine outpost. Prepare yourselves, because now they will hate us more and attack us." And so it happened. The Philistines gathered to attack the Israelites. They amassed a formidable force, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 cavalry soldiers, and an army so vast it was impossible to count. They camped at Michmash, east of Beth Aven. Many Israelites, fearing they could not defeat the Philistine army, went into hiding in caves and holes among the rocks and inside dry wells. Some even crossed the Jordan River and fled to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul remained in Gilgal, but all those in his army were trembling with fear. There in Gilgal, Saul waited 7 days for Samuel to come and present the offerings and sacrifices, for they could not begin the battle without them. But when Saul saw that Samuel was not arriving and that his army was beginning to scatter, he ordered, "Bring me the animals and the peace offerings that we are going to present to God." And Saul himself presented the offerings. He had not finished offering them when Samuel arrived. Seeing him, Saul went to greet him, but Samuel said, "What is this you have done?" Saul, flustered, replied, "Because my soldiers were already abandoning me and you did not arrive as you promised, I felt compelled to present the offerings to seek God's help. Besides, the Philistines were already in Michmash, ready to come to Gilgal and attack me." But Samuel, his voice stern, said, "You have acted foolishly. If you had obeyed the command of the Lord your God, your kingdom would have lasted forever. But because you did not, your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has already decided who the next king will be, a king who will obey him." With that, Samuel turned away from Gilgal and went to Gibeah of Benjamin. Saul then counted the soldiers who were still with him, and they numbered about 600. All of them stayed with him and his son Jonathan. Meanwhile, the Philistines who were encamped at Michmash divided their army into 3 groups. One group went toward Ophrah near Shual, another went toward Beth-horon, and the third went toward the border that is in the valley of Zeboim on the way to the wilderness. Among the Israelites there was no one who worked with iron. The Philistines did not allow it, for fear that the Israelites would make swords and spears from that metal. They did not even have a way to sharpen their plows, hoes, axes, and picks. Therefore, they had to go to the land of the Philistines and pay them a high price to sharpen their tools. On the day of battle, the only ones who had a sword and a spear were Saul and Jonathan. Meanwhile, a detachment of the Philistine army was stationed at the pass of Michmash. Chapter 14. Saul camped at Migron under a pomegranate tree on the outskirts of Gibeah. With him were 600 soldiers and the priest Ahijah, who was the son of Ahitub and the nephew of Ichabod. His grandfather was Phinehas, son of the priest Eli, who had served God in Shiloh. Jonathan, restless and bold, said to the young man who helped him carry his armor, "Come, let's go over to the other side, to the Philistine outpost. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." He slipped away without telling anyone, not even his father. His armor-bearer said to him, "Do all that you have in mind." His companion said, "Go ahead. I am with you heart and soul." As they approached the Philistine outpost, Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Come now, we will cross over to these men and let them see us. If they say to us, 'Wait there until we come to you,' then we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' then we will climb up, because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands." So they showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. When the Philistines saw them, they said to each other, "Look, the Hebrews are crawling out of the holes they were hiding in." Then they shouted to Jonathan and his armor-bearer, "Come up to us and we'll teach you a lesson." Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." So Jonathan climbed up, using his hands and feet, with his armor-bearer right behind him. At each Philistine soldier he encountered, Jonathan struck him down, and his armor-bearer finished him off. In that initial attack, Jonathan and his armor-bearer struck down about 20 men in an area within a half-acre. Moreover, God caused the earth to quake, so that panic struck the whole army, the men in the field, and in the outpost, and even the raiding parties, and the ground shook. It was a terror sent by God. Saul's watchmen at Gibeah in Benjamin saw the army melting away in confusion. Saul said to the men who were with him, "Muster the forces and see who has left us." And when they did, it was discovered that Jonathan and his armor-bearer were not there. Saul said to Ahijah, "Bring the ark of God here." At that time it was with the Israelites. While Saul was talking to the priest, the tumult in the Philistine camp increased more and more. So Saul said to the priest, "Withdraw your hand." Then Saul and all his men assembled and went to the battle. They found the Philistines in total confusion, striking each other with their swords. Those Hebrews who had formerly been with the Philistines and had gone up with them to their camp went over to the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. When all the Israelites who had hidden in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were running away, they joined the battle in hot pursuit. So the Lord rescued Israel that day, and the battle moved beyond Beth-aven. Now the Israelites were in distress that day, because Saul had bound the people under an oath, saying, "Cursed be anyone who eats food before evening comes, before I have avenged myself on my enemies." So none of the troops tasted anything. The entire army entered the woods, and there was honey on the ground. When the army came to the edge of the woods, they saw the honeycombs dripping with honey, yet no one put his hand to his mouth, because they feared the oath. But Jonathan had not heard that his father had bound the people with the oath. So he reached out the end of the staff that was in his hand and dipped it into the honeycomb. He raised his hand to his mouth, and his eyes brightened. Then one of the soldiers told him, "Your father bound the army under a strict oath, saying, 'Cursed be anyone who eats food today. That is why the men are faint.'" Jonathan said, "My father has made trouble for the army. See how my eyes brightened when I tasted a little of this honey? How much better it would have been if the men had eaten today some of the plunder they took from their enemies. Would not the slaughter of the Philistines have been even greater? That day they struck down the Philistines from Michmash to Aijalon, and the army was exhausted. They rushed down upon the plunder and, taking sheep, cattle, and calves, they slaughtered them on the ground and ate them, together with the blood. Then someone said to Saul, 'Look, the men are sinning against the Lord by eating meat that has blood in it.' So Saul said, 'You have been unfaithful. Roll a large stone over here at once.' Then he said, 'Go out among the men and tell them, each of you bring me your ox or your sheep, and slaughter it here and eat it. Do not sin against the Lord by eating meat with blood still in it.' So everyone brought his ox that night and slaughtered it there. Then Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first time he had done this. Saul said, 'Let us go down after the Philistines by night and plunder them until dawn, and let us not leave one of them alive.' 'Do whatever seems best to you,' they replied. But the priest said, 'Let us inquire of God here.' So Saul asked God, 'Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you give them into Israel's hand?' But God did not answer him that day. Saul therefore said, 'Come here, all you leaders of the army, and let us find out what sin has been committed today. As surely as the Lord who rescues Israel lives, even if it lies with my own son Jonathan, he must die.' But not one of them said a word. Saul then said to all the Israelites, 'You stand over there, I and Jonathan my son will stand over here. Do what seems best to you,' the army said. Then Saul prayed to the Lord, the God of Israel, 'Give me the right answer.' And Jonathan and Saul were taken by lot, and the army was cleared. Saul said, 'Cast the lot between me and Jonathan my son.' And Jonathan was taken. Then Saul said to Jonathan, 'Tell me what you have done.' So Jonathan told him, 'I merely tasted a little honey with the end of my staff. Must I now die?' Saul said, 'May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if you do not die, Jonathan.' But the army said to Saul, 'Must Jonathan die, he who has brought about this great deliverance in Israel? Never. As surely as the Lord lives, not a hair of his head will fall to the ground, for he helped God this day.' So the army rescued Jonathan, and he was not put to death. Then Saul stopped pursuing the Philistines, and they returned to their own land. After Saul had assumed rule over Israel, he fought against their enemies on every side: Moab, Ammon, Edom, the kings of Zobah, the Philistines, and Amalek. Wherever he turned, he was victorious. He fought valiantly and defeated the Amalekites, delivering Israel from the hands of those who had plundered them. Saul's sons were Jonathan, Ishvi, and Malchishua. The name of his older daughter was Merab, and that of the younger was Michal. His wife's name was Ahinoam, daughter of Ahimaaz. The name of the commander of Saul's army was Abner, son of Ner, and Ner was Saul's uncle. Saul's father Kish and Abner's father Ner were sons of Abel. Chapter 15. Samuel said to Saul, "I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says: I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they were coming up from Egypt. Now go, attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys." So Saul summoned the men and mustered them at Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 from Judah. Saul went to the city of Amalek and set an ambush in the ravine. Then he said to the Kenite, "Go away, leave the Amalekites so I do not destroy you along with them, for you showed kindness to all the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt." So the Kenite moved away from the Amalekites. Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. He took Agag king of the Amalekites alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak they totally destroyed. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was troubled, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. Early in the morning Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel, where he has set up a monument in his own honor, and has then gone on down to Gilgal. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. But Samuel said, What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear? Saul answered, The soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God, but we totally destroyed the rest. Enough, Samuel said. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Tell me, Saul said. Samuel said, Although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel. And the Lord sent you on a mission, saying, Go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Wage war against them until you have wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? But I did obey the Lord, Saul said. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. But Samuel replied, Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. Then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. I have violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the men, and so I gave in to them. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me, so that I may worship the Lord. But Samuel said to him, I will not go back with you. You have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you as king over Israel. As Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught hold of the edge of his robe, and it tore. Samuel said to him, The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind. For he is not a human being, that he should change his mind. Saul said, I have sinned, but please honor me before the elders of my people and before Israel. Come back with me so that I may worship the Lord your God. So Samuel went back with Saul, and Saul worshipped the Lord. Then Samuel said, Bring me Agag king of the Amalekites. Agag came to him confidently, thinking, Surely the bitterness of death is past. But Samuel said, As your sword has made women childless, so will your mother be childless among women. And Samuel put Agag to death before the Lord in Gilgal. Then Samuel left for Ramah, but Saul went up to his home in Gibeah of Saul. Until the day Samuel died, he did not go to see Saul again, though Samuel mourned for him. And the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. Chapter 16. The Lord said to Samuel, How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king. But Samuel said, How can I go? Saul will hear about it and kill me. The Lord said, Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate. Samuel did what the Lord said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. Do you come in peace? They asked. Samuel replied, Yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" "There is still the youngest," Jesse answered. "He is tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Samuel then went to Ramah. Now the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. Saul's attendants said to him, "See, an evil spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord command his servants here to search for someone who can play the harp. Whenever the evil spirit from God comes on you, he will play, and you will feel better." So Saul said to his attendants, "Find someone who plays well and bring him to me." Saul then commanded his servants, "Find someone who plays the harp well and bring him to me." One of the attendants responded, "I know just the person. His name is David, and he's the son of Jesse from Bethlehem. David is not only a skilled harpist, but also a brave warrior. He's articulate, handsome, and the Lord is with him." Intrigued, Saul immediately sent a message to Jesse, "Send me your son David, the shepherd." Jesse, seizing the opportunity, loaded a donkey with provisions as a gift for the king. He sent David with a load of bread, a skin of wine, and a young goat. David arrived at the palace and entered into Saul's service. David's skill and demeanor pleased Saul so much that he made him one of his armor-bearers. Whenever the tormenting spirit from God afflicted Saul, David would take up his harp and play. The music soothed Saul, and the evil spirit would depart, bringing him relief. Therefore Saul sent word to Jesse, "I am very pleased with your son. Let him remain in my service, for he brings me comfort." Chapter 17 *. Now the Philistines gathered their forces at Soko in Judah and prepared for battle against the Israelites. They pitched camp at Ephes-Dammim, between Soko and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites also mustered their forces and camped in the valley of Elah, positioning themselves on opposite hills with the valley in between. From the Philistine ranks emerged a champion, Goliath of Gath, a man of immense stature, nearly 9 feet tall. He was clad in a bronze helmet and wore bronze scale armor weighing approximately 125 pounds. Bronze greaves protected his legs, and he carried a bronze javelin slung across his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was as thick as a weaver's beam, and its iron point weighed about 15 pounds. A shield-bearer preceded him. Goliath strode forth and bellowed a challenge to the Israelite army. "Why come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. I defy the armies of Israel this day. Send me a man to fight me." Upon hearing Goliath's words, Saul and the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Day after day, morning and evening, for 40 days, the Philistine giant taunted and terrorized the Israelite army. Now Jesse, an old man with 8 sons, lived in Bethlehem of Judah. His 3 oldest sons, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah, were serving in Saul's army. David, the youngest, tended his father's sheep and ran errands, carrying messages and provisions to his brothers at the front lines. One day Jesse instructed David, Take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers, and hurry to their camp. Also, take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some token from them." Early the next morning, David entrusted the sheep to a shepherd, loaded up the supplies, and set out. He arrived at the camp as the Israelite army was marching out to their battle positions, shouting the war cry. The Israelites and Philistines were drawing up their lines, facing each other. David left his supplies with the supply keeper and ran to the battle line to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual challenge, and David overheard it. When the Israelites saw Goliath, they fled in terror. David inquired of the soldiers standing nearby, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel?" They repeated to him what had been promised. "The man who kills him will receive great wealth, and the king will give him his daughter in marriage, and his family will be exempt from taxes in Israel." When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the soldiers, he was furious. "Why have you come down here?" he demanded. "And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited and wicked you are. You just came down to watch the battle. Now what have I done?" David retorted, "Can't I even speak?" He turned away from him and asked someone else the same question, and received the same answer. Some men overheard David's inquiries and reported them to Saul, who summoned him. David declared to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go up against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul conceded, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I am not used to them." So David took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag and, with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. Meanwhile, Goliath, with his shield-bearer in front of him, advanced toward David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, ruddy and handsome, and he despised him. He cursed David by his gods. "Am I a dog," he said to David, "that you come at me with sticks? Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." David replied to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from its sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Sharaim road to Gath and Ekron. After they had pursued the Philistines, the Israelites returned and plundered their camp. David took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem. He put the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. As David went out to meet Goliath, Saul asked Abner, the commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" Abner replied, "As surely as you live, your majesty, I don't know." The king said, "Find out whose son this young man is." As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem. Where were you hiding when all this trouble started? Meet me the day after tomorrow near the stone of Ezel. I'm going to shoot some arrows as though I'm practicing my aim. I'll send a boy out to find them. If you hear me say, 'The arrows are close by, bring them here,' then as surely as the Lord lives, you can come out of hiding. You're safe. There's no danger. But if you hear me call out, 'The arrows are further away,' then you must flee because the Lord is sending you away. And may the Lord be a witness to the covenant we've made." So David went and hid in the field. When the festival of the new moon began, the king sat down to eat, as he always did, near the wall. Jonathan sat opposite him and Abner sat next to Saul. But David's place was empty. Saul didn't say anything that day, thinking, "Something must have made David ceremonially unclean. That's why he hasn't come." But when David's place was empty again the next day, the second day of the month, Saul asked Jonathan, "Why hasn't David been here for the last 2 days?" Jonathan replied, "David begged me to let him go to Bethlehem. He said, 'Please let me go because my family is observing a sacrifice in the town, and my brother insisted that I be there. So if you're willing, please let me get away so I can see my brothers.' That's why he hasn't come to the king's table." Saul's anger flared against Jonathan. "You stupid son of a whore," he yelled. "Do you think I don't know that you've sided with David, to your own disgrace and to the disgrace of your mother? As long as David is alive, you'll never be king. Now go and get him. He's as good as dead. But what has he done? Why should he be put to death?" Jonathan protested, his voice rising in disbelief. Saul, instead of answering, hurled his spear at Jonathan, intending to kill him. Jonathan knew then that his father was determined to kill David. Jonathan rose from the table in fierce anger and ate no food on that second day of the feast, for he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. It was then, with the spear nearly impaling him, that Jonathan realized the deadly extent of his father's hatred for his loyal friend. The next morning Jonathan went out to the field with a young boy, according to his agreement with David. "Run and find the arrows I shoot," he told the boy. As the boy ran, Jonathan shot an arrow beyond him. Jonathan shouted, "Isn't the arrow over there? Further beyond you?" He commanded, "Hurry! Don't stop." The boy, not knowing what it all meant, picked up the arrows and brought them back to Jonathan. Only Jonathan and David knew what the arrows signified. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and told him, "Go back to town." After the boy was gone, David came out from the south side of the stone heap. He bowed to the ground, prostrating himself 3 times before Jonathan. They kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. Then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the Lord's name, saying, 'The Lord is a witness between you and me, and between our descendants forever.'" Then Jonathan went back to the town. David proceeded to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he met David and asked, "Why are you alone? Why is no one with you?" David replied, "The king has sent me on a private mission. He told me, 'Don't let anyone know what I'm sending you to do.' As for my men, I've told them to meet me at a certain place. Now what food do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever you can find." "I don't have any ordinary bread on hand," the priest replied. "However, there is some consecrated bread here, but only if your men have kept themselves from women." "Of course," David replied. "We always keep ourselves pure whenever we're on a campaign." And besides, this is an especially holy mission. So, since there was no other bread available, the priest gave David the consecrated bread, the bread that was placed before the Lord. It had just been removed and replaced with fresh bread. David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a spear or sword here? The king's business was so urgent that I didn't even have time to grab a weapon." "Well," the priest replied, "I have the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah. It's wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. Take it if you want it, for there is no other sword here." "That's the one," David exclaimed. "Give it to me." Now Dog the Edomite, Saul's chief herdsman, was there that day, having been detained before the Lord. Then David fled from Saul and went to Achish king of Gath. But Achish's officers said to him, "Isn't this David, the king of his land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. David heard these comments and was very afraid of King Achish. So he pretended to be insane while he was with them. He acted like a madman, scratching on the doors of the gate and drooling down his beard. Finally, Achish said to his officers, "Look at this man. He's insane. Why did you bring him to me? We have enough madmen here. Why bring another one to make a spectacle in my house? Must we have this fellow bothering me?" David therefore departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down there to him. In addition to these, everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became captain over them. And there were about 400 men with him. From there David went to Mizpah in Moab and said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and mother stay with you until I learn what God will do for me." So he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him the entire time David was in the stronghold. One day the prophet Gad came to David and told him, "Leave the stronghold and go into the land of Judah." So David left and went to the forest of Hereth. Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered. Saul was sitting beneath a tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah, holding his spear, and all his servants were standing around him. "Listen to me, you men of Benjamin," Saul shouted. "Has David promised all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders in his army? Is that why you have conspired against me? Not one of you told me when my own son made a covenant with David. Not one of you cares about me enough to tell me that my own son has stirred up my servant to lie in wait for me." Then Dog the Edomite, who was standing with Saul's men, spoke up. "I saw David when he went to see Ahimelech son of Ahitub at Nob. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him and gave him provisions. He also gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine." So the king sent for Ahimelech son of Ahitub and all his relatives, the priests at Nob, and they came to the king. "Listen to me, son of Ahitub," Saul shouted. "Yes, my lord," Ahimelech replied. "Why have you conspired against me with David?" Saul demanded. "Why did you give him food and a sword and inquire of God for him? Why did you help him rebel against me and lie in wait for me?" "But sir," Ahimelech replied, "is there anyone among all your servants as faithful as David? He is the captain of your bodyguard and a son-in-law of the king. Surely I wasn't consulting God for him just recently. I always do this for him. Please don't accuse me and my family of treason, for I knew nothing about this whole affair. You will surely die, Ahimelech, along with all your relatives," the king shouted. Then he ordered his bodyguards, "Kill these priests of the Lord, for they have conspired with David. They knew he was running away from me, but they didn't tell me." But the king's men refused to kill the priests of the Lord. So the king said to Dog, "You do it." Then Dog the Edomite stepped forward and killed them, 85 priests in all who wore the ephod. Then Dog went to Nob, the town of the priests, and killed everyone there, men and women, children and babies, and all the cattle, donkeys, and sheep. But one of the sons of Ahimelech son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled to David. Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the Lord's priests. "I knew it," David exclaimed. "When Dog the Edomite was there that day, I knew he would tell Saul. Now I am responsible for the death of all your father's family. Stay here with me and don't be afraid. I will protect you with my own life, for the same person who seeks your life is seeking mine as well." Now the Philistines came and attacked Keilah and plundered the threshing floors. When David inquired of the Lord, he asked, "Should I go and attack these Philistines?" The Lord answered him, "Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah." But David's men said to him, "Look, we're afraid even here in Judah. What will happen if we go to Keilah and fight the entire Philistine army?" David asked the Lord again, and the Lord answered, "Go down to Keilah, for I will give you victory over the Philistines." So David and his men went to Keilah, fought the Philistines, and took away their livestock. He inflicted a great defeat on the Philistines and saved the people of Keilah. Abiathar son of Ahimelech had brought the ephod with him when he fled to David at Keilah. Saul was told that David had gone to Keilah. "Good," Saul exclaimed. "God has handed him over to me, for David has trapped himself by entering a walled city with barred gates." So Saul mobilized his entire army to march to Keilah and capture David and his men. David learned that Saul was plotting against him. So he said to Abiathar the priest, "Bring me the ephod." Then David prayed, "O Lord, God of Israel, I have heard that Saul is planning to come to Keilah and destroy the town because of me. Will the people of Keilah betray me into his hands? Will Saul actually come? O Lord, God of Israel, please tell me." And the Lord replied, "Yes, he will come." Then David asked, "Will the people of Keilah betray me and my men to Saul?" And the Lord replied, "Yes, they will betray you." So David and his men, about 600 in all, left Keilah and kept moving from place to place. When Saul learned that David had escaped from Keilah, he didn't go there. David stayed in the strongholds in the wilderness and in the hill country of the desert of Ziph. Saul hunted him continuously, but God did not hand David over to him. One day while David was at Horish in the desert of Ziph, he received the news that Saul was on his way to Ziph to search for him and kill him. Jonathan went to find David there at Horish and encouraged him to stay strong in his faith in God. "Don't be afraid," Jonathan said. "My father will never find you. You will be the king of Israel, and I will be second in command to you, just as my father Saul knows." So the two of them renewed their covenant before the Lord. Then Jonathan returned home, but David stayed at Horish. Then some people from Ziph went to Saul at Gibeah and said, "David is hiding among us in the strongholds of Horish on the hill of Hakilah, south of Jeshimon. Now, your majesty, come down whenever you want, and we will be glad to hand him over to you." Saul replied, "May the Lord bless you for your concern for me. Go and check again to be sure of where he is staying and who has seen him there. I have heard that he is very crafty. Find out exactly which hiding places he uses, and come back to me with reliable information. Then I will go with you, and if he is in the area, I will track him down, even if I have to search every clan in Judah." So the people of Ziph returned to their town ahead of Saul. Meanwhile, David and his men had moved into the desert of Maon, in the Arabah south of Jeshimon. When Saul and his men began to search for him, David was told about it, so he went down to the rock and stayed in the desert of Maon. When Saul heard about this, he pursued David into the desert of Maon. Saul and his men were on one side of the mountain, while David and his men were on the other side, hurrying to get away from Saul. As Saul and his forces were closing in on David and his men, a messenger arrived with the news, "Come quickly, the Philistines are raiding the land." So Saul broke off his pursuit of David and returned to fight the Philistines. That is why the place has been called the Rock of Escape. David then went up from there and stayed in the strongholds of En-Gedi. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told that David was in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul chose 3,000 elite troops from all Israel and went to search for David and his men near the rocks of the wild goats. He came to the sheepfolds along the way, and he found a cave. Saul went in to relieve himself. Now David and his men were hiding in the back of the cave. Now is the day the Lord was talking about when he said to you, "I will hand your enemy over to you so you can do whatever you want with him." David's men whispered to him. Then David crept forward and quietly cut off a piece of Saul's robe. But then David's conscience began to bother him because he had cut Saul's robe. "May the Lord keep me from doing such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed," he said to his men. "I will not lift my hand against him, for he is the Lord's anointed." So David restrained his men and did not let them attack Saul. Saul soon left the cave and started on his way. Then David came out and shouted after him, "My lord the king!" When Saul looked around, David bowed low to the ground with his face touching the earth. Then he called out to Saul, "Why do you listen to the people who say I am trying to harm you? This very day you have seen with your own eyes that the Lord put you at my mercy here in the cave. Some of my men told me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lift my hand against my master, because he is the Lord's anointed. Look, my father, at what I have in my hand. It's the piece I cut from your robe. The fact that I cut it off but didn't kill you proves that I am not trying to harm you. I have not wronged you, even though you are hunting me down to kill me. May the Lord judge between us. Perhaps the Lord will avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but I will never harm you. As that old proverb says, from evildoers come evil deeds. So you can be sure I will never harm you. Who is the king of Israel trying to catch anyway? Should he chase after a dead dog or a single flea? May the Lord therefore be our judge and show who is right. He will see my innocence and rescue me from your power." When David had finished speaking, Saul called out, "Is that really you, David my son?" Then Saul began to cry. "You are a better man than I am," he said to David. "For you have repaid me good for evil. Yes, you have been wonderfully kind to me today, for you had the opportunity to kill me, but you didn't do it. Who else would let his enemy get away when he had him in his power? May the Lord reward you well for the kindness you have shown me today. And now I realize that you are surely going to be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will flourish in your hands. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill my descendants and wipe out my name from my father's family." So David promised Saul he would not. Then Saul went home, but David and his men went back to their stronghold. Now Samuel died, and all Israel gathered to mourn for him. They buried him at his home in Ramah. Then David moved down to the desert of Paran. There was a wealthy man from Maon who owned property near Carmel. He was a descendant of Caleb. His name was Nabal, but he was a surly and mean man in all his dealings. His wife, Abigail, was intelligent and beautiful. Nabal was shearing his sheep in Carmel at the time. When David heard about this, he sent 10 of his young men to Carmel with these instructions. "Go to Nabal and greet him in my name. Give him this message: Greetings to you, peace to you, your family, and everything you own. I understand that it is sheep shearing time. When your shepherds were here among us near Carmel, we did not mistreat them, and nothing was ever stolen from them. Ask your own men, and they will tell you this is true. So would you be kind to us, since we have come at a festive time? Please give us whatever you can spare." So David's young men went to Nabal and gave him the message in David's name. Then they waited. But Nabal replied, "Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who run away from their masters. Should I take my bread and water and the meat I've slaughtered for my shearers and give it to a band of men coming from who knows where?" So David's young men returned and told him what Nabal had said. "Get your swords," David ordered. So his men strapped on their swords and followed him, about 400 in all, leaving 200 to guard their supplies. Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants went to Abigail and told her, "David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, but he insulted them. These men have been very good to us. All the time we were with them in the fields, they did not mistreat us, and nothing was ever stolen from us. In fact, day and night they were like a wall of protection to us and the sheep. You need to realize this and see what can be done, because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole family. He is such a wicked man that no one can even talk to him." Abigail wasted no time. She quickly gathered 200 loaves of bread, 2 wineskins full of wine, 5 dressed sheep, nearly 100 pounds of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 fig cakes. She loaded them on donkeys and told her servants, "Go on ahead, I'll follow you." But she didn't tell her husband, Nabal. As she was riding her donkey down a hillside, she met David and his men coming toward her. David had just been saying, "What a waste it was to protect this man's property in the wilderness. We didn't lose a single thing, and he has repaid me evil for good. May God strike me and kill me if I let a single one of his men live until morning." When Abigail saw David, she quickly dismounted and bowed before him with her face to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "Please forgive me, my lord, but it was my husband's fault. Listen to my words, though I am but a humble servant. Pay no attention to the insults of Nabal. His name means fool, and a fool he truly is. The fault is mine, my lord, entirely mine, for I did not see the messengers you sent. But God will not allow you to avenge yourself by shedding innocent blood. I pray that God will punish your enemies as Nabal will be punished. Please accept the provisions I have brought for you and your men, and forgive my transgression. You only wage war when God commands it. I am certain that God will establish your dynasty and ensure that your descendants reign over Israel. Therefore, do not commit this evil act, neither now nor ever. When someone pursues you and seeks to end your life, God will protect you, and you will be secure. But those who seek your life, God will cast them away, as a stone is flung from a sling. You, my lord, will be the leader of Israel, for God will fulfill all the promises he has made to you. When that day comes, you will not bear the burden of guilt for having struck down innocent people, nor will you suffer the remorse of having taken vengeance into your own hands. And when all this comes to pass, remember me, your humble servant." David replied, "Blessed be the God of Israel, who sent you to meet me this day, and blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you, who have kept me from going to bloodshed and from avenging myself with my own hand. For as surely as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, surely by morning light not one male of Nabal's household would have remained." David accepted the provisions Abigail had brought him, and he said, "Go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your voice and granted your request." Abigail then returned to her home and found Nabal holding a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. He was in high spirits and very drunk, so she told him nothing at all until daylight. Then, in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all these things, and his heart failed within him, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Blessed be the Lord, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal and has kept his servant from wrongdoing. The Lord has returned the evil of Nabal on his own head." Then David sent messengers to Abigail to ask her to become his wife. When David's servants came to Abigail at Carmel, they said, "David has sent us to you to take you to be his wife." She bowed down with her face to the ground and responded, "I am your servant, ready to wash the feet of my Lord's servants." Quickly, Abigail prepared herself, mounted a donkey, and with her 5 female servants, followed David's messengers and became his wife. David had already taken Ahinoam of Jezreel as a wife, and now he married Abigail. Michal, Saul's daughter, had been given to another man, Palti son of Laish, who was from Gallim. Chapter 26. Now the Ziphites went to Saul at Gibeah and said, "Is not David hiding on the hill of Hachilah, which is beside Jeshimon?" So Saul went down to the desert of Ziph with his 3,000 select Israelite soldiers to search for David in the wilderness of Ziph. David stayed in the wilderness, and he saw that Saul had come after him into the wilderness. David sent out scouts and learned that Saul had indeed arrived. David then went to the place where Saul had camped. He saw the exact spot where Saul, Abner son of Ner, the commander of his army, were sleeping. "Who will go down into the camp with me to Saul?" David asked Ahimelech the Hittite and Abishai son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother. "I'll go down with you," said Abishai. So David and Abishai went to the army by night, and there Saul lay sleeping inside the camp with his spear stuck into the ground beside his head. Abner and the soldiers were lying around him. "Today God has delivered your enemy into your hands," Abishai said to David. "Now let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of his spear. I won't strike him twice." But David said to Abishai, "Don't destroy him. Who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As surely as the Lord lives," David said, "the Lord himself will strike him, or his time will come and he will die, or he will go into battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. Now get his spear and water jug that are near his head, and let's go." So David took the spear and water jug near Saul's head, and they left. No one saw or knew about it, nor did anyone wake up. They were all sleeping because the Lord had put them into a deep sleep. Then David crossed over to the other side and stood on top of the hill some distance away. There was a wide space between them. David called out to the army and to Abner son of Ner, "Aren't you going to answer me, Abner?" Abner replied, "Who are you who calls to the king?" David said, "You're a man, aren't you? And who is like you in Israel? Why didn't you guard your lord the king? Someone came to destroy your lord the king. What you have done is not good. As surely as the Lord lives, you deserve to die, because you did not guard your master, the Lord's anointed. Look around you. Where are the king's spear and water jug that were near his head?" Saul recognized David's voice and said, "Is that your voice, David my son?" David replied, "Yes, it is, my lord the king. Why does my lord pursue his servant? What have I done? What wrong am I guilty of? Now let my lord the king listen to his servant's words. If the Lord has incited you against me, then may he accept an offering. But if men have done it, may they be cursed before the Lord. They have now driven me from my share in the Lord's inheritance and have said, 'Go, serve other gods.' Now do not let my blood fall to the ground far from the presence of the Lord. The king of Israel has come out to look for a flea, as one hunts a partridge in the mountains." Then Saul said, "I have sinned. Come back, David my son. Because you considered my life precious today, I will not try to harm you again. Surely I have acted like a fool and have been terribly wrong." David said, "Here is the king's spear. Let one of your men come over and get it. The Lord rewards everyone for their righteousness and faithfulness. The Lord delivered you into my hands today, but I would not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. As surely as I valued your life today, so may the Lord value my life and deliver me from all trouble." Then Saul said to David, "May you be blessed, David my son. You will do great things and surely triumph." So David went on his way, and Saul returned home. Chapter 27. But David thought to himself, "One of these days I will be destroyed by Saul. The best thing I can do is to escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will give up searching for me anywhere in Israel, and I will slip out of his hand." So David and the 600 men with him left and went over to Achish son of Maach, the king of Gath. David and his men settled in Gath with Achish. Each man had his family with him, and David had his 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail of Carmel. When Saul was told that David had fled to Gath, he no longer searched for him. Then David said to Achish, "If I have found favor in your eyes, let some place in one of the country towns be assigned to me, that I may live there. Why should your servant live in the royal city with you?" So on that day Achish gave him Ziklag, and it has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. David lived in Philistine territory 1 year and 4 months. Now David and his men went up and raided the Jeshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites. From ancient times these peoples had lived in the land extending to Shur and as far as Egypt. Whenever David attacked an area, he did not leave a man or woman alive, but took sheep and cattle, donkeys and camels and clothing. Then he would return to Achish. When Achish asked, "Where did you go raiding today?" David would say, "Against the Negev of Judah, or against the Negev of Jerahmeel, or against the Negev of the Kenite." But David did not leave a man or woman alive to be brought to Gath to avoid giving the impression that they were spared, for fear they would betray his true intentions. This is what David did again and again, as long as he lived in Philistine territory. Achish trusted David and said to himself, "He has become so obnoxious to his people, the Israelites, that he will be my servant forever." Chapter 28. In those days the Philistines gathered their forces to fight against Israel. Achish said to David, You and your men will surely march out with me in the army. David said, Then you will see for yourself what your servant can do. Achish replied, Very well, I will make you my permanent bodyguard. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in his own town of Ramah. Saul had expelled the mediums and spiritists from the land. The Philistines assembled and came and set up camp at Shunem, while Saul gathered all the Israelites and set up camp at Gilboa. When Saul saw the Philistine army, he was afraid. Terror filled his heart. He inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him by dreams or Urim or prophets. Saul then said to his attendants, Find me a woman who is a medium, so I may go to her and inquire of her. There is one in Endor, they said. So Saul disguised himself, putting on other clothes, and at night he and 2 men went to the woman. Consult a spirit for me, he said, and bring up for me the one I name. But the woman said to him, Surely you know what Saul has done. He has cut off the mediums and spiritists from the land. Why are you setting a trap for me to bring about my death? Saul swore to her by the Lord, As surely as the Lord lives, you will not be punished for this. Then the woman asked, Whom shall I bring up for you? Bring up Samuel, he said. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said to Saul, Why have you deceived me? You are Saul. The king said to her, Don't be afraid. What do you see? The woman said, I see a ghostly figure coming up out of the earth. What does he look like? He asked. An old man wearing a robe is coming up, she said. Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. Samuel said to Saul, Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? Saul said, I am in great distress, for the Philistines are warring against me, and God has turned away from me. He no longer answers me, either by prophets or by dreams. So I have called on you to tell me what to do. Samuel said, Why do you consult me, now that the Lord has turned away from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done what he predicted through me. The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David. Because you did not obey the Lord or carry out his fierce wrath against the Amalekites, the Lord has done this to you today. The Lord will deliver both Israel and you into the hands of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also give the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines. Immediately Saul fell full length on the ground, filled with fear because of Samuel's words. His strength was gone, for he had eaten nothing all that day and all that night. When the woman came to Saul and saw that he was greatly shaken, she said, Look, your servant has obeyed you. I took my life in my hands and did what you asked me to do. Now please listen to your servant and let me give you some food so you can regain your strength and go on your way. He refused and said, I will not eat. But his men joined the woman in urging him, so he listened to them. He got up from the ground and sat on the couch. The woman had a fattened calf at the house, which she butchered at once. She took some flour, kneaded it and baked bread without yeast. Then she set the food before Saul and his men, and they ate. That same night they got up and left. Chapter 29. The Philistines gathered all their forces at Aphek, and Israel camped by the spring in Jezreel. As the Philistine rulers marched with their units of hundreds and thousands, David and his men were marching at the rear with Achish. The Philistine commanders asked, What about these Hebrews? Achish replied, This is David, who has been with me for a year or more. I have found no fault in him from the day he left Saul until now. But the Philistine commanders were angry with him and said, Send the man back, that he may return to the place you assigned him. He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us during the fighting. How better could he regain his master's favor than by taking the heads of our own men? Isn't this the David they sang about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands? So Achish called David and said to him, As surely as the Lord lives, you have been reliable, and I would be pleased to have you serve with me in the army. But the rulers don't approve of you. Now turn back and go home in peace. Do nothing to displease the Philistine rulers. But David asked, What have I done? "What have you found against your servant from the day I came to you until now? Why can't I go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" Achish answered, "I know that in my eyes you are as blameless as an angel of God, but the Philistine commanders have said, 'He must not go up with us into battle.' Now get up early, along with your lord's servants who have come with you, and leave in the morning as soon as it is light." So David and his men got up early in the morning to go back to the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. Chapter 30. David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day. Now the Amalekites had raided the Negev, attacking Ziklag and burning it. They had taken captive everyone in it, from the least to the greatest. They killed no one, but carried them off and went on their way. When David and his men came to Ziklag, they found it destroyed by fire and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to weep. David's 2 wives had been captured, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters. But David found strength in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, "Bring me the ephod." Abiathar brought it to him, and David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them?" "Pursue them," he answered. "You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue." David and the 600 men with him came to the Besor valley, where some stayed behind. 200 of them were too exhausted to cross the valley, but David and the other 400 continued the pursuit. They found an Egyptian in a field and brought him to David. They gave him water to drink and food to eat, part of a cake of pressed figs and 2 cakes of raisins. After he ate, his spirit revived, for he had not eaten any food or drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. David asked him, "Who do you belong to, and where do you come from?" He said, "I am an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I became ill 3 days ago. We raided the Negev of the Kerethites, some territory belonging to Judah and the Negev of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag." David asked him, "Can you lead me down to this raiding party?" He answered, "Swear to me before God that you will not kill me or hand me over to my master, and I will take you down to them." He led David down, and there they were, scattered over the countryside, eating, drinking and reveling because of the great amount of plunder they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from Judah. David fought them from morning until evening of the next day, and none of them got away, except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything else they had taken. David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the other livestock, saying, "This is David's plunder." Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him and who were left behind at the Besor valley. They came out to meet David and the men with him. As David and his men approached, they greeted them. But all the evil and troublemaking men among David's followers said, "Because they did not go out with us, we will not share with them the plunder we recovered. Let each man take only his wife and children, and go." David replied, "No, my brothers, you must not do that. The Lord has given us this plunder and has protected us. Who will agree with what you say? The share of the one who goes down to the battle should be the same as that of the one who remains with the supplies. All will share alike." He made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day to this. When David arrived in Ziklag, he sent some of the plunder to the elders of Judah, who were his friends, saying, "Here is a gift for you from the plunder taken from the Lord's enemies." David sent part of the plunder to those who were in Bethel, Ramoth Negev and Jattir, to those in Aroer, Siphmoth, Eshtemoa and Rachel, to those in the towns of the Jerahmeelites and the Kenite, to those in Hormah, Bor Ashan, Athak and Hebron, and to those in all the other places where David and his men had roamed. Chapter 31. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. The Israelites fled before them, and many fell dead on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines pressed hard after Saul and his sons, and they killed his sons Jonathan, Abinadab and Malchishua. The fighting grew fierce around Saul, and when the archers overtook him, they wounded him critically. Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through, or these uncircumcised fellows will come and run me through and abuse me." But his armor-bearer was terrified and would not do it. So Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When the armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul, his 3 sons, his armor-bearer, and all his men died together that same day. When the Israelites on the other side of the valley, along with those beyond the Jordan River, saw the Israelite army fleeing in disarray and realized Saul and his sons were dead, panic seized them. They too abandoned their towns and villages, scattering in fear of the advancing Philistines. Then the Philistines swept in, occupying the deserted cities and settlements. The next day, as they moved through the battlefield, stripping the slain Israelites of their valuables, they discovered the bodies of Saul and his 3 sons sprawled on Mount Gilboa. Without hesitation, the Philistines decapitated Saul. They stripped him of his royal armor, a symbol of his authority and power. Victorious messengers were dispatched throughout the Philistine territories, spreading the news of their triumph. The severed head of Israel's king, along with his armor, was paraded in their temples, celebrating before their idols, a testament to their God's supposed superiority over the God of Israel. Later, they placed Saul's armor as a trophy in the temple of Ashtoreth, their goddess of fertility and war. As for Saul and his sons, their bodies were hung on the city walls of Beth-shan, a gruesome display of conquest and a warning to any who dared defy Philistine dominance. Word of the desecration reached the brave men of Jabesh-Gilead. Remembering how Saul had once rescued them from the Ammonite siege, 1 Samuel 11, they couldn't bear the thought of their king's body being dishonored. Under the cover of night, a band of courageous men undertook a daring mission. They traveled the long miles to Beth-shan, braving the darkness and the risk of encountering Philistine patrols. They stealthily scaled the city walls, retrieved the bodies of Saul and his sons, and carried them back to Jabesh. Upon reaching Jabesh, they cremated the bodies, a common practice to prevent further desecration. The bones were then carefully gathered and buried beneath a tamarisk tree, a place of remembrance and mourning. For 7 days, the people of Jabesh-Gilead mourned Saul and his sons, fasting as a sign of their deep sorrow and respect. Have you heard the story of 1 Samuel? This book is an epic narrative that marks a pivotal moment in Israel's history, a dramatic transition from the era of judges to the establishment of the monarchy. It's not just a historical account of political events, but a profound revelation of God's character, his sovereignty over all nations, his unwavering faithfulness to his promises, and how he works through flawed individuals to fulfill his eternal purposes. Through the intertwined lives of Samuel the prophet, Saul the first king, and David, the king after God's own heart, we witness a drama that teaches us fundamental truths about leadership, obedience, repentance, faith, and how God establishes and deposes kingdoms according to his sovereign will. It's believed that this book was likely written during the reigns of David or Solomon, around 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. Jewish tradition attributes its authorship primarily to the prophet Samuel, although he died before the final events narrated in the book. It's probable that other contemporary prophets completed the work, adding to and editing Samuel's original writings. The period covered spans approximately 100 years, from Samuel's birth to Saul's death. This was a time of radical transformation for Israel, as they transitioned from a tribal confederation led by judges raised by God in times of crisis to becoming a unified monarchy with an earthly king. This transition was not merely political. It was profoundly theological, raising critical questions about the relationship between God as the true king of Israel and the newly established institution of human monarchy. The book opens with the story of Hannah, a barren woman who desperately cried out to God for a child. Her husband, Elkanah, loved her dearly, but that didn't alleviate the pain of her infertility, nor did it stop the taunts and provocations of Peninnah, Elkanah's other wife, who had children. In her anguish, Hannah went to the tabernacle at Shiloh and prayed with such intensity that Eli, the high priest, initially mistook her for being drunk. "I am a woman deeply troubled. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord." When Hannah explained that she was pouring out her soul before the Lord, Eli blessed her, saying, "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him." Hannah then made a solemn vow, a testament to her faith. "O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head." God heard her prayer, and she conceived and gave birth to Samuel, whose name means heard by God. When Samuel was weaned, Hannah fulfilled her vow and brought him to the tabernacle, entrusting him to the care of Eli to serve the Lord. Her song of praise, which she spoke upon dedicating Samuel, is one of the most beautiful passages in the Old Testament, prophetic in its scope, exalting the sovereignty of God who raises the poor from the dust and establishes kings. This canticle foreshadows the Magnificat of Mary centuries later, solidifying the significance of Hannah's devotion. Hannah understood that her son did not truly belong to her, but to God, and her willingness to surrender him completely demonstrates extraordinary faith. Meanwhile, Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were wicked men who profaned the priestly ministry. They brazenly helped themselves to the best portions of the sacrifices before they were offered to God, and they engaged in immoral acts with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The stark contrast between Samuel, the dedicated child ministering before the Lord, and the corrupt sons of Eli establishes a central theme of the book. God honors those who honor him, but those who despise him will be held in contempt. A man of God came to Eli with a message of judgment. Because Eli had honored his sons more than God, failing to effectively discipline their wickedness, God would cut off his priestly house. This prophecy would be tragically fulfilled. One night, when Samuel was still young, God called him audibly. Samuel, mistaking it for Eli's voice, ran to him. "Samuel, here I am." This happened 3 times. Finally, Eli discerned that the Lord was calling the boy and instructed him on how to respond. "Eli, go lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant hears.'" God then revealed to Samuel that he would execute judgment on the house of Eli because of the wickedness of his sons, a prophecy that would come to pass with devastating consequences. Samuel was afraid to tell Eli the vision, but when he did, Eli accepted God's judgment with resignation. "Eli, it is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." The word of Samuel came to all Israel, establishing him as a prophet of the Lord. The Philistines attacked Israel, resulting in the deaths of 4,000 Israelite soldiers. The elders decided to bring the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh, believing it would guarantee them victory, a superstitious act rather than a display of genuine faith. Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, accompanied the Ark. When the Ark arrived at the camp, Israel shouted with such force that the earth shook. The Philistines were initially afraid, but they emboldened each other to fight like men. In the ensuing battle, Israel was catastrophically defeated. 30,000 soldiers perished, the Ark of God was captured, and Hophni and Phinehas were killed, fulfilling the prophecy against Eli's house. When a messenger brought the news to Shiloh, Eli, who was 98 years old and nearly blind, fell backward from his chair, broke his neck, and died. Phinehas's wife, upon hearing the news, went into labor and died giving birth. Before dying, she named the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel," because the Ark of God had been captured. The Philistines took the Ark to Ashdod and placed it in the temple of their god Dagon. But the next morning, Dagon had fallen face down before the Ark. They set him back in his place, but the following morning, Dagon had fallen again, this time with his head and hands broken off. God afflicted the inhabitants of Ashdod with painful tumors and bubonic plague. They moved the Ark to other Philistine cities, but in each place, God punished them with plagues and outbreaks of disease. Finally, after 7 months, the Philistines decided to return the Ark to Israel along with a guilt offering. They placed it on a new cart pulled by 2 cows that had never been yoked, separating them from their calves. If the cows went directly toward Israelite territory, they would know that the God of Israel had afflicted them. The cows went straight to Beth Shemesh without turning aside. The people of Beth Shemesh rejoiced at seeing the ark, but some irreverently looked inside, and God struck them down, killing 70 men. The ark was eventually taken to Kiriath-Jearim, where it remained for 20 years. Samuel called Israel to repentance, urging them to put away their foreign gods and the Ashtoreths, prepare their hearts for the Lord, and serve him only. Israel gathered at Mizpah to fast and confess their sins. When the Philistines heard of this gathering, they came to attack. Israel was afraid, but Samuel prayed for them and offered a burnt offering. The Lord thundered with a great sound against the Philistines, throwing them into panic, and Israel pursued and defeated them. Samuel took a stone and named it Ebenezer, meaning stone of help, saying, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." The Philistines were subdued and did not invade Israelite territory again during Samuel's lifetime. Samuel judged Israel all his life, going on a circuit annually to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, but always returning to Ramah, where his home was and where he built an altar to the Lord. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges over Israel. But they did not follow his ways, turning aside after dishonest gain, accepting bribes, and perverting justice. The elders of Israel gathered and came to Samuel at Ramah, saying, "Give us a king to judge us like all the other nations." This request displeased Samuel, who prayed to the Lord. God told him to listen to the voice of the people, because they had not rejected him, Samuel, but God himself as their king. From the day God brought them out of Egypt until that day, they had been rejecting him and serving other gods. God instructed Samuel to solemnly warn them about what the king who would reign over them would be like. Samuel warned the people about the consequences of having a king. He would take their sons for his military service and forced labor. He would take their daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He would seize the best of their fields, vineyards, and olive groves to give to his servants. He would take 1/10 of their grain and flocks, and they themselves would become his slaves. Samuel told them that they would cry out because of their king, but God would not answer them. However, the people refused to listen, insisting, "No, we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles." Samuel repeated all these words to the Lord, who told him, "Listen to them and give them a king." There was a man from Benjamin named Kish, who had a son named Saul, a handsome and tall young man, taller than anyone else in Israel from the shoulders up. When some of his father's donkeys were lost, Kish sent Saul with a servant to look for them. After searching without success, the servant suggested that they consult a seer in the nearby city. That seer was Samuel. The day before, the Lord had revealed to Samuel that he would send him a man from the land of Benjamin, and Samuel was to anoint him as prince over Israel, to save his people from the hand of the Philistines, because God had seen the affliction of his people and their cry had reached his ears. When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said to him, "This is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people." Samuel treated Saul with great honor, seating him in the place of honor at the banquet and giving him the best portion. The next day, Samuel took a flask of oil and poured it on Saul's head. He kissed him and told him that the Lord had anointed him as prince over his inheritance. Samuel gave him specific signs that would occur to confirm his anointing, including that the Spirit of the Lord would come upon him with power and he would be changed into a different man. Everything happened as Samuel had said. But when Samuel summoned the people to Mizpah to present their new king, Saul hid among the baggage. They brought him out, and when he stood among the people, he was taller than anyone else. Samuel proclaimed, "Do you see the man the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among all the people." All the people shouted, "Long live the king!" Soon after, Nahash the Ammonite besieged Jabesh-Gilead. The inhabitants asked to make a treaty with him, but Nahash demanded that he gouge out everyone's right eye as a disgrace to Israel. They sent messengers throughout Israel asking for help. When Saul heard the news, the Spirit of God came upon him with power. His anger flared. He took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent them throughout Israel, saying, "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel." The fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they went out as one man. Saul mustered them, 300,000 from Israel and 30,000 from Judah. They attacked the Ammonites and completely defeated them, liberating Jabesh-Gilead. After this victory, Saul's kingdom was confirmed at Gilgal with great celebration. Samuel delivered a farewell address, although he would continue as a prophet. He challenged the people to testify against him if he had ever defrauded them or taken a bribe. They testified that he had been just and honest. Samuel reviewed the history of Israel, reminding them how God had repeatedly delivered them when they cried out to him, but they constantly turned away. He told them that although they had done wrong in asking for a king, if both they and their king feared the Lord and served him, it would go well with them. But if they disobeyed, the hand of God would be against them. To confirm his words, Samuel called on God, who sent thunder and rain in the middle of the wheat harvest, something very unusual. The people were greatly afraid and begged Samuel to pray for them. Samuel assured them that he would not forsake them, but would pray for them and teach them the good and right way. Saul had reigned only 2 years when he committed his first major error. The Philistines gathered to fight against Israel with a massive army. Saul waited 7 days at Gilgal as Samuel had instructed him, but Samuel did not arrive, and the people began to scatter, growing impatient. Saul took upon himself the priestly role and offered the burnt offering. No sooner had he finished than Samuel arrived. Samuel asked, "What have you done?" Saul tried to justify himself. The people were scattering. Samuel was not coming. The Philistines were gathering, and he felt he had to seek the Lord's favor. Samuel replied, "You have done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." This scene is crucial to understanding the rest of the book. Saul had shown that he trusted his own judgment more than God's word. His impatience and disobedience revealed a heart that was not completely submitted to God. Although he would continue as king for years, his kingdom was doomed. God was already seeking a successor, a man after his own heart. The ensuing battle showcased the extraordinary courage of Jonathan, Saul's son, who, with his armor-bearer, attacked a Philistine outpost, trusting that nothing could hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. God caused panic in the Philistine camp, and Israel won a great victory. Saul made a rash oath, saying that anyone who ate before evening would be cursed. Jonathan, who had not heard the oath, ate some honey he found in the forest. When Saul consulted God that night, God did not answer him, indicating that there was sin in the camp. He discovered that Jonathan had eaten and declared that he must die. But the people intervened, rescuing Jonathan because he had worked with God that day. This incident further highlights Saul's impulsive nature, making hasty vows without considering the consequences. Saul's second major sin came when God commanded him through Samuel to attack the Amalekites and completely destroy everything they had, sparing nothing. This was an order of Huram, complete destruction as divine judgment on Amalek for what they had done to Israel when they came out of Egypt. Exodus 17 verses 8 to 16. Saul attacked and defeated the Amalekites, but he spared King Agag and the best of the sheep, cattle, and lambs. The word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, "I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions." Samuel was distressed and cried out to God all that night. In the morning, Samuel went to meet Saul, who greeted him, saying, "The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions." Samuel asked, "Then what is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear?" Saul tried to justify himself, saying that the people had spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord, but that they had destroyed everything else. Samuel interrupted with one of the most important declarations in the Old Testament. "Samuel, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry." because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." Saul confessed, "I have sinned. I have violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the people, and so I gave in to them." But his repentance was superficial, more concerned with his public image than with his relationship with God. He begged Samuel to honor him before the elders and the people. As Samuel turned to leave, Saul seized the edge of his robe, and it tore. Samuel said to him, "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you." Samuel then killed Agag personally, executing the judgment that Saul had failed to carry out. Samuel went to Ramah, and he did not see Saul again until the day of his death, though Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." Samuel feared that Saul would kill him if he found out, but God instructed him to go under the pretense of offering a sacrifice. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders trembled and asked if he came in peace. Samuel sanctified Jesse and his sons. When he saw Eliab, the eldest son, he thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but the Lord had not chosen any of them. Samuel asked if these were all his sons. Jesse replied that there was still the youngest, who was tending the sheep. Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." They sent for David, who was ruddy, with a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Meanwhile, the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. Saul's servants suggested finding someone who knew how to play the harp to bring him relief when the evil spirit came upon him. One of the servants knew of David, describing him as skilled in playing, a brave and vigorous man, a warrior, prudent in speech and handsome, and the Lord was with him. Saul sent for David, who entered his service. Whenever the evil spirit came upon Saul, David would take his harp and play. Then relief would come to Saul. He would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. The Philistines gathered their armies for battle at Soko in Judah. A champion named Goliath of Gath came out of the Philistine camp, a giant who was 6 cubits and a span tall, approximately 9 feet, 9 inches, almost 3 meters. He wore massive armor and challenged Israel to send out a man to fight him. If the Israelite defeated him, the Philistines would be Israel's servants. But if Goliath won, Israel would serve the Philistines. For 40 days, morning and evening, Goliath strode out and issued his challenge. Saul and all Israel were terrified. David had returned to Bethlehem to tend his father's sheep. Jesse sent him to take food to his older brothers, who were in the army. David arrived just as Goliath was issuing his challenge. The men of Israel were running away. Terrified, David inquired, "What reward awaits the man who defeats this Philistine and removes the shame from Israel?" They informed him that Saul would bestow great riches upon him, grant him his daughter's hand in marriage, and exempt his father's house from taxes. Eliab, David's eldest brother, was incensed with him, accusing him of arrogance and a wicked heart, questioning why he had abandoned the few sheep in the wilderness. David retorted, "What have I done now? Is this not just talk?" David's words reached Saul, who summoned him. David declared, "Let no one's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine." Saul responded, "You are not able to go against this Philistine and fight him. You are just a youth, and he has been a warrior from his youth." David then recounted how he had slain lions and bears that attacked his father's sheep, and declared, "This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul, impressed by David's unwavering faith, conceded, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul then attempted to outfit David in his own armor, a bronze helmet, and a coat of mail. However, David, unaccustomed to such trappings, found them cumbersome and could barely move. He said to Saul, "I cannot go with these, for I am not used to them." So David took them off. Instead, he took his staff, selected 5 smooth stones from the brook, placed them in his shepherd's bag, and, with his sling in hand, approached the Philistine. Goliath, upon seeing David, was contemptuous, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. He saw no warrior, only a boy. He scoffed, "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" And he cursed David by his gods. Goliath roared, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." David responded with one of the most powerful declarations of faith in Scripture. David proclaimed, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly shall know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand." David ran towards Goliath, reached into his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. David, without a sword, had felled the giant. David ran and stood over the Philistine, seized Goliath's own sword, drew it from its sheath, and killed him, cutting off his head. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. The men of Israel and Judah surged forward, shouting their battle cry and pursuing the Philistines, striking them down along the way. David took Goliath's head and brought it to Jerusalem, but he placed his armor in his tent. When Saul saw David going out against the Philistine, he inquired of Abner, the commander of the army, whose son this youth was. Abner did not know. After David killed Goliath, he was brought before Saul, who asked him whose son he was. David replied, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." Jonathan, Saul's son, made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. He stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, even to his sword and to his bow and his belt. David went out wherever Saul sent him and prospered. Saul set him over the men of war, and it was pleasing in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. But as they were coming home, when David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing, to meet King Saul with tambourines, with joy, and with musical instruments. The women sang, "Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Saul was furious, and this saying displeased him greatly. He said, "They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands, and what more can he have but the kingdom?" And from that day Saul eyed David with suspicion. The next day, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house while David was playing the harp. Saul had his spear in his hand, and he hurled it, thinking, "I will pin David to the wall," but David evaded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000, and David went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. When Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in awe of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before them. Saul then attempted to use his daughter Michal as a snare, offering her to David in marriage in exchange for the foreskins of 100 Philistines, hoping David would die in the attempt. But David went out and killed 200 Philistines and married Michal. So Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. Saul was even more afraid of David. So Saul was David's enemy continually. Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants, that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, Saul my father seeks to kill you. Therefore be careful tomorrow morning. Stay in a secret place and hide yourself. Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father and said to him, Let not the king sin against his servant David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his deeds have been very good toward you. For he took his life in his hand and he struck down the Philistine, and the Lord worked a great salvation for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood by killing David without cause? And Saul listened to the voice of Jonathan. Saul swore, As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death. Jonathan called David, and Jonathan told him all these things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as before. But when there was war again, David went out and fought with the Philistines and struck them with a great blow, so that they fled before him. Then a harmful spirit from the Lord came upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand. And David was playing the harp. And Saul sought to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he eluded Saul so that he struck the spear into the wall. And David fled and escaped that night. Saul sent messengers to David's house to watch him, that he might kill him in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, told him, If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you will be killed. So Michal let David down through the window, and he fled away and escaped. David fled to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and lived at Naioth. Saul sent messengers to take David, and when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as head over them, the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. When Saul was told of it, he sent other messengers, and they also prophesied. And Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they also prophesied. Then Saul himself went to Ramah and came to the great well that is in Secu. And he asked, Where are Samuel and David? And one said, Behold, they are at Naioth in Ramah. And he went there to Naioth in Ramah. And the Spirit of God came upon him also, and as he went, he prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. And he too stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel and lay naked all that day and all that night. Therefore it is said, Is Saul also among the prophets? David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, What have I done? What is my guilt? And what is my sin before your father, that he seeks my life? But Jonathan did not believe that his father truly intended to kill David. David explained that Saul knew of the love between them and was concealing his intentions from Jonathan. They devised a plan to discover Saul's true intentions using the celebration of the new moon. David would hide in the field, and if Saul inquired about him, Jonathan would say that David had gone to Bethlehem for a family sacrifice. If Saul reacted well, David would be safe. But if he became angry, Jonathan would know that Saul had decided to kill David. They renewed their covenant of friendship, including their descendants. When Saul inquired about David, his anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he insulted him terribly and hurled a spear at his own son. Jonathan rose from the table in fierce anger and was grieved for David, because his father had disgraced him. The next morning, Jonathan went out into the field with a little boy and shot arrows as a prearranged signal for David. After sending the boy back, David emerged from his hiding place and bowed himself 3 times. They kissed one another and wept with one another, David weeping the most. Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, because we have both sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my offspring and your offspring forever. This farewell marks the beginning of David's long period of flight, during which Saul relentlessly pursued him, while David refused to take vengeance against the Lord's anointed. David fled to Nob, where the priest Ahimelech gave him the consecrated bread and the sword of Goliath. Unfortunately, Doeg the Edomite, a servant of Saul, was there and witnessed everything. David then fled to Gath, a Philistine territory, where he feigned madness to save himself. He then hid in the cave of Adullam, where he was joined by his brothers, his family, and every man who was in distress, in debt or bitter in soul. He came to have about 400 men with him. When Saul learned that Ahimelech had helped David, he ordered the deaths of all the priests of Nob. Saul's guards refused to kill the priests of the Lord. But Dog the Edomite obeyed, killing 85 priests and destroying the entire city of Nob. Only Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, escaped and fled to David, who received him and promised him protection. For years, David fled from place to place. He saved Keilah from the Philistines but had to flee when Saul came after him. He hid in the wilderness of Ziph, where Jonathan visited him secretly and strengthened his hand in God. He narrowly escaped when Saul almost captured him in the wilderness of Maon. On 2 occasions, David had the opportunity to kill Saul, but he refused. The first time was in the cave of En-Gedi when Saul entered to relieve himself. David secretly cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Afterward, he went out and showed him the piece of the robe, demonstrating that he could have killed him, but he did not because Saul was the Lord's anointed. Saul wept and acknowledged that David was more righteous than he, prophesying that David would be king. The second time, David entered Saul's camp at night while everyone was asleep. He took the spear and the water jar that were beside Saul's head, again demonstrating that he could have killed him, but he refused. Between these incidents occurred the episode with Nabal and Abigail. David and his men had protected the shepherds and flocks of Nabal, a wealthy but foolish man. When David sent messengers asking for provisions, Nabal insulted them. David was enraged and prepared to kill all the males in Nabal's household. But Abigail, Nabal's wife, who was intelligent and beautiful, took abundant provisions and went out to meet David. She bowed before him and with extraordinary wisdom begged him not to shed innocent blood. David blessed God for sending her and accepted her gift. When Abigail told Nabal what she had done, he suffered something like a seizure and died 10 days later. David sent for Abigail to be his wife and she accepted. Finally, exhausted by Saul's constant persecution, David made the questionable decision to seek refuge among the Philistines. Achish, king of Gath, gave him the city of Ziklag. David lived in Philistine territory for a year and 4 months. He made raids against peoples who were enemies of Israel. But Achish thought that David was attacking Israel, making himself an enemy to his people. The Philistines gathered their armies to fight against Israel. The Philistine princes objected to David's presence, fearing that he would turn against them in battle. Achish, though he trusted David, dismissed him. David returned to Ziklag and found it burned. His wives and the children of his men had been captured by the Amalekites. David's men spoke of stoning him, but David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. He consulted the Lord, who told him to pursue the Amalekites and that he would surely overtake them and rescue the captives. David pursued with 600 men, though 200 stayed behind because they were too exhausted. They found an Egyptian youth who had been a servant of an Amalekite, who led them to the camp. David attacked from dawn until evening the next day, killing everyone except 400 young men who fled on camels. He rescued all the captives and all the spoil. Meanwhile, the Philistines fought against Israel on Mount Gilboa. The battle went hard against Saul. The archers overtook him, and he was badly wounded. He said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and mistreat me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Therefore Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell upon his sword and died with him. Thus died Saul, his 3 sons, including Jonathan, his armor-bearer, and all his men on that day together. The Philistines cut off Saul's head, stripped off his armor, and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines, proclaiming the news to their idols and to the people. They put his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. When the inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead, the city that Saul had delivered at the beginning of his reign, heard what the Philistines had done, all the valiant men arose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan, and they came to Jabesh and burned them there. And they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh and fasted 7 days. Thus ends the first book of Samuel with the tragic death of Saul, the king who began with such potential but ended rejected by God, pursuing the man God had chosen to replace him, dying by his own hand after consulting a medium in desperation. The contrast between Saul and David is the central theme of the book. Saul was impressive on the outside, but deficient on the inside. David was insignificant on the outside, but he had a heart after God. Saul trusted in his own judgment. David trusted in God. Saul disobeyed when it was inconvenient to obey. David refused to avenge himself on the Lord's anointed, even when he had every human justification. Saul ended up abandoned by God. David would be established as the king after God's own heart, whose dynasty would last forever through the Messiah who would come from his lineage. Beloved listener, you have heard the first book of Samuel, and its message resonates powerfully for your life today. This book shows you that God does not look at what man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. It shows you that obedience is better than sacrifice, that rebellion is as the sin of divination. It shows you that God establishes and deposes kings according to his sovereign will. It shows you that pride, impatience, and disobedience lead to ruin, but humility, faith, and obedience lead to blessing. Are you trusting in your own wisdom like Saul, or are you seeking the heart of God like David? Are you obeying partially while rationalizing your disobedience, or are you submitting completely to the word of God? If you have been living in rebellion against God, if you have been trusting in your outward appearance while your heart is far from him, today is the day of repentance. Confess your sins, submit your life completely to Christ, and experience the transformation that only he can give. Share this message with others. Comment on how God has spoken to your heart. The time is short. Christ is coming soon. May the Lord use this message for his glory and for the salvation of many. Amen.